We are Novels Hall Dynasty. If you want to listen to more novels or more chapters of this novel, visit a path with the name of Novice Hall Dynasty. We continue with the novel.
Almighty Coach. Part 1. Chapter 1. Diley left the exam hall, walked through the crowd, and looked at the people around him. Everybody was flushed with happiness over their success and conversing happily. This made Diley even more upset. Gosh, I screwed up on the exam. There is no way that I can get into the interview round, he thought. Diley rubbed his temple and felt his head getting even heavier. Why do I feel so dizzy? Have I got a cold? I shouldn't have gone to see the meteor shower last night, now I did it. Diley thought to himself. Diley was an ordinary undergraduate senior student. As a graduate this year, he had chosen not to take the postgraduate entrance exam. Because his parents were normal blue-collar people without any power or influence, his family's financial condition was very average. It had already been difficult enough for them to raise and support a college student. Diley was a filial son and he didn't want to burden his parents anymore. This was why he had decided to join the job-hunting army along with this year's many graduates. The problem was that his major, sports training, was kind of lame. People could easily draw a conclusion on what the students of this major could do after they graduated. The employment prospects for this major was not great. Graduates from the literature or philosophy majors, for example, might also have a difficult time finding jobs, but at least they could aim for something more general such as a secretary or copywriter position to start with. But even those general positions did not welcome students from sports majors. This year was hard enough for normal graduates, and it was even worse for Diley, who came from an ordinary family without any money or network. Moreover, he was not from a 985 or 211 university. These factors, coupled with the fact that he was in such a specific major, made it tough for people like him when it came to job hunting. That was why he targeted for the recruitment exam for public institutions. For example, primary and middle schools hire PE teachers every year. Nonprofit sports schools and teams looked for coaches too. Being a teacher or coach was at least a secured job in those public institutions. To prepare for the exam, Diley had begun reviewing since the first semester of his senior year. He had also gone to the education and psychology training class that was organized by the Bureau of Education. He had even managed to pass the tests and get the teaching certificate. Today was the day of the recruitment exam, but he had been feeling dizzy since the morning. He had pushed through it and went into the exam hall, but he was too sick to even find the right directions. Because of this, the exam had been like the hell mode of a video game with an extra bonus, except the only result for this game was game over. He continued rubbing his temple and thought to himself, I thought I could enjoy not only 2 days off every week in the public holidays if I became a PE teacher, but also the summer and winter vacations. Well, that's not gonna to happen now. I guess I'll just go write some online novels. Maybe a novel about an athlete. I even have the title for it, All-Around Athlete. I bet nobody is going to read a book with such a lame title. What kind of a nerdy writer would write such a boring novel like that? Said a voice that suddenly popped up in his head. What? Who's talking? Diley looked around and found that no one was talking to him. Don't bother searching, I am in your head. The same voice talked to Diley again. Diley suddenly had goosebumps all over. He was terrified by that voice. This was quite understandably a normal reaction for any normal people who found out that someone, or something, was speaking in their mind. Don't be afraid. I'm not going to hurt you, the voice claimed. Who the hell is that guy? What is happening? Diley thought to himself. Don't call me that guy, the voice now made an echo in Diley's head. He knows what I am thinking about. Diley thought to himself, surprised. Of course I do. So you can communicate with me just by thinking, said the voice. So who on earth are you? Diley thought silently. He was not used to this form of communication. I am your guide, and also part of the coaching system. My mission is to help you get used to this coaching system and make the best of it, the voice answered. Diley immediately thought of the so-called systems in the online novels. It was almost like cheating. If you had this kind of systems, the world would be your oyster. You could go from being a loser one second to on top of the world the next. Everyone would throw themselves at you. Dali had never imagined that lucky things like this could ever happen to him. Coaching system. It sounds like a system related to a personal coach, like having someone outside of the game help you without notifying other players. Is it like cheating? Dali asked. Exactly. It can be a cheating system for your life. The voice read Dali's mind again and said, this coaching system not only can help you become a coach, an excellent coach, the best in the world, but also it can lead your life all the way to the top. This system is almighty. The fact that you have this coaching system makes you the luckiest person in the world. An almighty coaching system. Deposit 1 million yuan into my bank account and I'll buy your word, Dali said, challenging the system. I cannot do that, the voice answered, but you could easily make 1 million, 10 millions, and even 100 millions with the help of this coaching system. I don't think I want you in my head, Dali rejected the system subconsciously. He felt uneasy about this thing that had suddenly entered his head. No way, the voice said determinedly. I followed the meteor for a very long time and finally found a place to settle. It took me all morning to match with you. It's too late for you to say no. The whole morning. So it was this guy's fault that I suffered from the dizziness the entire morning. Dali complained to himself. I have to match your brain waves to communicate with you. It might be the reason you feel a little bit dizzy. The voice admitted quite honestly. A little bit dizzy? You ruined my exam. You are the reason why I won't get a job now. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to find a job? Do you have any idea how long I've been preparing for this exam? Dali felt so angry now that he knew who was responsible for what had happened. The voice said carelessly, all you could have been is merely a PE teacher in a middle school even if you passed the exam. But with me, it's possible for you to be the best coach in the world and lead you to an unparalleled, successful life. A PE teacher in middle school means nothing compared to a world-class coach. A world-class coach, Dali repeated. No, I don't need that. All I need to do is earn more than 10,000 yuan per month. I just want to have enough to buy a house and to get married. That would make me really content. Only 10,000 yuan monthly salary? Come on. With my help, you can become the best coach in the world, even if you are an idiot, the voice followed immediately. So are you like an instructor for a newbie? Dali asked. Something like that. If there's anything you don't understand about this coaching system, feel free to ask me. I'll give you some reasonable proposals, the system said. All right. Then you have to tell me what to do now. Dali finally gave in. First, you need to get into the coaching system, said the system. How? Dali asked. Use your mind, the system answered. Use my mind how? Use your mind, stupid. After the system answered, Dali used his thoughts to direct what was happening. He suddenly found himself in an infinite starry sky, with all the stars surrounding him. Am I in a system? Why do I feel like I'm in the endless universe? A golden projection suddenly appeared in Dali's vision. He looked carefully and identified that it was someone's head. But it was very blurred, he could only see its facial features. It was hard to distinguish its specific appearance. Newbie instructor? Dali asked carefully. Guide. Newbie guide. The golden head corrected him. Dali took a deep breath and asked, what should I do next? You are still a newbie. But the good thing about being a newbie is that you can get some type of starting bonus. This is a welcome gift for you, said the golden head. A golden box showed up in front of Dali the next second. The golden head began speaking. This is the welcome gift for newbies. You can open it up and have a look. Dali opened the gift without any hesitation. He saw that there were two things in the box. There was a golden card on the left and something resembling a radar on the right. Dali picked up the card first. Top-level coach trial card, 14 days. What is this? If you stick this card to your body, you can experience the training results of a top-level coach for the 14 days that follow, said the golden head. Dali nodded and tried to stick the card on his body. The golden head stopped him and said, "Don't use it now. It's a one-time only card. If you use it now, you can't use it anymore." "Then when should I use it?" Diley asked. "When you have someone to train, at least. You don't even have a training target right now. Wouldn't it be a waste to use the top card?" said the golden head. "You are right," Diley nodded. He picked up the radar-like object. "What is this radar?" "The primary detector. You can use it to detect individual ability. The range for detecting is 10 meters. You can try it on some random person in real life," the golden head explained to him. Diley went back to real life and saw an old woman walking up to him with her dog. "Detect." He used his mind, then saw a list of statistics in the system the next second. Detecting target, ordinary person, sports ability, 46. 46? Is that high or low? I should try it on another person and compare them. He looked around and found a young man of average height walking by. Detect. He used his mind again and saw another list of statistics. Detecting target, ordinary person, sports ability, 68. 68 is much higher than the dog walking lady. I wonder what am I? Diley then used the detector on himself and saw that the result was 80. Wow, I didn't expect my sports ability to be as high as 80. He was very satisfied with the number. The system's voice appeared in his mind again. The upper limit for an ordinary person is 99. Your ability is an 80, which means you always work out. Yes, I majored in sports training. Besides the normal lessons, we also have many classes for practicing what's required on the training ground, said Diley. The golden head continued pointing out, what you should do next is learn more about your character attributes. A big screen showed up in front of Diley. Underneath the picture of Diley there were details. Name, Diley coach level, newbie, 0 and hundredths, others, and training list, and the column for 0 and hundredths looks like something similar to empirical value. I could upgrade to the next level by reaching 100 and hundredths, Diley talked to himself. Exactly. That is your experience. You will get it when you train others. This means the first thing you need to do is to find a target to train, said the golden head. Are there any special requirements for training targets? Or could anyone be my train? Asked Diley immediately. The golden head answered right away, there are no special requirements. The target could be an athlete, an ordinary person, disabled person, or even someone in a coma. As long as you have the 14-day top-level coach trial card, it will be very easy to upgrade. Just find some random person and train them for a few days. That would do it. Someone in a coma can't even move. What could I do with them? Diley left the coaching system. He began to feel the coaching system was even more unreliable. Find some random people. It's easy for him to say. If I pass this exam and become a PE teacher, I can easily find hundreds of students to train. But where should I look for targets now? I guess I should just start writing online novels. As Diley was pondering over his tasks, a poster attracted his attention. There were a few big words on it. Talent education. Looking for PE teacher urgently. Excellent pay and benefits. Chapter 2. Training for the high school pre-entrance exam. Normally, the exams for public institutions and civil service were set up in primary schools and middle schools. For example, the exam hall that Diley had gone to was set up in the 9th Middle School in Yuzo City. And where there were primary and middle schools, where there are training and tutoring institutions, which offered classes for writing, math, and foreign language. When it came to hobbies, painting classes, calligraphy classes, and all kinds of classes for musical instruments were also available. If a kid hadn't been enrolled in 3 or 5 classes at a time, he would feel embarrassed to even say hi to his classmates. The poster that Diley had seen was for one of those tutoring institutions named Talent Education. Talent Education. Looking for PE teacher urgently. Excellent pay and benefits. I wonder if I have a chance. I still have to wait a month to receive my graduation certificate. Well, I have no other choices anyway. Maybe I should just give it a shot. It's also a good chance to see if the coaching system is real or not, Dali thought as he approached the gate of talent education. "Excuse me, are you looking for a PE teacher?" Dali asked as he walked through the gate. The person who came to welcome Dali was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was very pale, with a pair of golden wire-frame glasses. It made him look very knowledgeable. "You came here to apply for the position." "You look very young," said the man. Dali smiled awkwardly and spread his arms. "I just graduated. My major is sports training, and I am here today because I came to take the public institution's recruitment exam. I happened to see your poster and want to get some more information. Sorry, I didn't expect this today, so I don't have my resume. I do have my student card with me though." Dali took out his student card and handed it over to the man. The man took a glance at it, then gave the student card back to Dali. He said, "My name is Jiana Chen. This talent education was opened by me and my friend." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Chen," said Dali immediately. "Just call me Professor Chen." "I was a middle school math teacher," Jiana Chen continued. "We are looking for a part-time PE teacher. It's mainly about giving sports training to middle school students in preparation for the high school PE entrance exam. You must know about it, right?" Dali nodded. "I had to take the PE exam in my high school examination too. I remember PE made up 30 points of the exams. Now it's 60 points. Almost 8% of the entire high school entrance exam," said Jiana Chen and postured an aid with his hand. PE was always one of the mandatory items in high school entrance exams. The proportion PE took was different depending on the region. It ranged from a minimum of 30 points to a maximum of 80 points. And in the city where Dali lived, PE made up 60 points of the exam. Jiana Chen continued, "There are only 2 weeks left before the high school PE entrance exam. Our program opened a special training class for it, mainly targeting junior students in middle school who are going to take the exam. The PE teacher we originally hired is no longer available due to some unexpected emergency. We really needed a PE teacher to replace him as soon as possible. Because you were a sports training major, I think it will be no problem for you to train middle school students. Am I right?" "No problem at all," Dali nodded. "Because all our trains are full-time students who have to go to school during the day, the training cannot conflict with their normal class time. Usually we go from 17:30 to 19:30 on weekdays. It will be 2 hours. On Saturdays and Sundays, it will be an entire day of training. Since the exam is around the corner, we only have about 2 weeks." Jiana Chen stopped for a second, then continued, "As for the salary, we can offer you 300 yuan a week during the trial period. On top of that, for every student you coach who completes their training program, you will get 500 yuan as commission. If you are okay with it, I can offer you the trial contract right now." Now, Dali had never imagined that the whole thing would have gone so well. The man had only checked his student card and offered him the job. "Yes. Today is Saturday and tomorrow is Sunday. We are going to begin our class tomorrow. According to the plan, it will be a full day of training. I hope you can be here and start working tomorrow," Jiana Chen said eagerly. "I have no problem coming here to start the work tomorrow. It's just," Dali said hesitantly. "Perfect. I'll go get the trial contract." Jiana Chen ran into the office behind him. Dali walked out of talent education, still baffled by what had just happened. Everything had gone so well that he couldn't believe it. It said on the internet that job hunting was very hard for college graduates. Why was it so easy for me to get the offer today? He only took a look at my student card and hired me. Was it some kind of trap? I've checked the contract many times and everything including the salary, bonus, and working time are all listed clearly. They didn't even ask for a deposit, nor charge me for the uniform." Dali thought carefully and remembered that he had seen some news on the internet about employment fraud. Most of them would offer a trial period in the beginning and then ask for a deposit for all kinds of reasons, such as the uniform, training fee, and so on. "Well, I'll bring 20 yuan with me for lunch and leave all my bank cards at home. They'll never get a penny from a poor student like me," he thought. Dali came to talent education the next early morning. Gianna Chen drove him to the City Youth Activity Center personally. There was a specialized space for activity in the City Youth Activity Center. The center had athletics tracks, an equipment room, basketball court, football pitch, tennis court, badminton court, and ping-pong hall, everything you could imagine. They even had a swimming pool. All these fields were only open to public when they held competitions. Usually they were lent to the after-class tutoring centers. For example, the 8 basketball courts were lent to 4 tutoring institutions that specialized in basketball training. Talent Education wanted to do high school PE entrance exam training, so they had rented a field in the Youth Activity Center which included a jumping pit, calisthenics bars, and an athletics track. However, they had to share the athletics track with other tutoring institutions. This field would be the place Dali would work for the next 2 weeks. The Youth Activity Center is an official government-managed activity center. The training schools that rent space here should be registered in the Bureau of Education. They shouldn't be frauds, Dali thought as he followed Gianna Chen to the place Talent Education was renting. Gianna Chen pointed at a row of horizontal bars and said, "Besides this fixed equipment, we will rent a box of equipment including dumbbells and stands for push-ups from the Youth Activity Center. They will send it here later. There are numbers attached to that equipment. Be careful not to misplace any of them, otherwise we have to pay for it." Dali nodded to show that he understood. Gianna Chen looked at his watch and said, "It's almost time. The students are coming. We better welcome the parents who are sending their children here." 12 students stood in front of Dali. All of them were boys, and they all shared the same characteristic: they were all overweighted. According to the physical health standard for students established by the nation, if a senior middle school boy's height was 165 centimeters and he weighed less than 46 kilograms, he suffered from malnutrition. Between 46 kilograms and 56 kilograms, he was considered thin. Between 56 kilograms and 58.5 kilograms, he was average. If he weighed more than 58.5 kilograms, he was considered overweight. And if more than 66 kilograms, he was obese. The 12 people in front of him were obviously in the obese category. One was bigger than the other. After examining all of them, Lee determined that the skinniest one was still obese. 1 or 2 of them might have even been more than 90 kilograms. A bunch of fat potatoes. Dali thought to himself as he sighed. Though after considering it, Dali realized they wouldn't be here in the high school PE entrance exam training class if they did not have weight issues. I should check their sports abilities. All right. 24, 27, 22, 25, is no one over 30? What the hell is 19? He might be even weaker than the dog of that old lady yesterday. Dali thought, quite upsetly. "Don't look down upon the old lady from yesterday who was walking the dog," said the system. Nowadays, old ladies practice square dancing 1 to 2 hours every day. They are much stronger than these chubbies. You are right. But there's nothing I can do about it. I have to take it easy. According to the contract, I can get 500 yuan commission per student. Which means I can get 6.000 yuan if I can manage to train them until the end. 6.000 yuan in 2 weeks. How lucky I am. The more Dali thought about it, the more he found it unbelievable. His morale was high thinking about that 6.000 yuan. He took the list of names and went in front of them. He cleared his throat and said, "Hello students. We will now begin roll call. Zheming Huang. Present. Kong Kongwu. Present." Chapter 3. Training starts. The subjects of the high school PE entrance exam differed depending on region. Yuzhou City, where Dali lived, had 3 tests on the high school PE entrance class. For boys, there was the 1,000-meter race, standing long jump, and pull-ups. Girls were required to do the 800-meter race, standing long jump, and sit-ups. Because the full score for the entire exam was 60 points, each activity counted for 20 points. Compared to the girls, the activities for boys were much more difficult. And they were obviously even more difficult for this group of little chubbies. Standing long jump might have been the easiest one. As long as you got the hang of it, you could pass the exam, even if you were a little big. For those students who were overweight, running the 1,000-meter race was not that difficult. It would be more the question of whether they could finish the race in time or not. If they were too slow, they would get no points at all. As for the pull-ups, it could be like hell for those fatties. For teenagers whose bodies were not developed enough, their arms were weak points. Those who weighed less had an advantage when it came to pull-ups. Some middle school students who seemingly suffered from malnutrition could easily finish couple dozens of pull-ups, while those who were well-built had much more difficulty performing this exercise. Some of the overweight students, on the other hand, couldn't even complete one pull-up. Today, the group who had come to the training belonged to the last category. If they had been good at sports, they wouldn't have even spent the money to join this special training class. My name is Lee. I will be your coach. From now on, you will call me Coach Lee instead of Teacher Lee. Lee put emphasis on the word coach. Alright, let's begin. Everybody follow me to do some warm-up exercises, said Lee. Even if Lee could not be considered a coach, he was at least a sports training student. When he was at school, his grades were not bad, nor had he ever failed any classes. In order to be a teacher after graduation, he had even studied education. It wouldn't be difficult for his ability to train a bunch of middle school students. I think you should use the top-level coach trial card. A voice said in Lee's mind. It was the golden head from the coaching system. The top-level coach trial card. I would have forgotten about it if you hadn't reminded me. Lee's consciousness went into the coaching system and pasted the card on his body. The number 14 appeared on the card. 14 days. This number will decrease one by one as the days go by. The card will disappear when the number turns to 0. Lee checked his own status while the system spoke. Name, Lee coach level, newbie, 0 and hundreds, others, top level coach trial card, 14 days left, training list. And you have to add those students to your training list, this way your training will be effective for them, the system continued. Okay, add these names to the list. Zheming Huang, Coach Lee, Kong Kong Wu. By the way, does this training list accept everyone? Lee asked suddenly. Of course not. Those added to your training list must be those you train yourself. If they are no longer being trained by you, then they will be removed from the list. You can also delete them from the list yourself. You can add a random person to test that, said the system. Lee followed the system's words and started to think about some of the world's best athletes. However, the system indicated that it couldn't add them to the list. Then Lee tried to add some of his roommates to the list, but still failed. So it's true that I can only add those who were trained by me. Lee considered this, then returned to reality and began the real training. Pull-ups were one of the subjects of the high school PE entrance exam, mainly testing upper body development, as well as hanging strength. Many people thought that pull-ups were all about having muscle in their arms. In reality, it was not only about having strong arms, but also having strong shoulders and a strong back. Just like those bodybuilders in the gyms, they were actually doing pull-ups to train the muscles in their back as opposed to the muscles in their arms. To practice pull-ups, it was very important to learn how to use your strength. For those who couldn't even finish one pull-up, it was not that they didn't have enough strength, but that they didn't know proper technique. Normally, those who couldn't even finish one pull-up could do at least one or two after learning the correct form. The first mission for Lee was to teach his students how to make the right movements, and how to use their strength along with technique. Pull-ups were actually the most basic movement for sports training. It was also the most familiar one for a college student who had majored in sports training. For him, it was a piece of cake to teach them the right movements and techniques to best use their strength. Zheming Huang, pay attention to using the strength of your shoulders. Use your shoulders to lead your body. Very good. Use more strength. Do not just use your forearms. Use the strength from all of your upper body muscles. Don't raise your hips, that won't work. Raise your shoulders, yes, like that. Well done. Try it again. Lee had started out supporting his legs, but now he had made them go completely and instructed Zheming Huang to complete a pull-up again by himself. I succeeded. I finished a pull-up on my own. Zheming came down from the horizontal bar and hailed rapturously. The other students looked at him enviously. Dai wiped the sweat from his forehead. He mumbled to himself, "This Zheming looks heavy and slow. However, he is pretty smart, and his comprehension is not bad. I only taught him once and he's already mastered the techniques. Could it be that he actually has talent on sports? It has nothing to do with his talents. It is the top-level coach card that rocks," said the system again. "What does that mean?" Dai asked in his mind. Zheming is just a normal person. Because he's overweight, his flexibility and compatibility are worse than the others. Because you are now in top-level coach condition, it gives Zheming a top-level training result. It only takes him one time to learn the techniques of a pull-up. The system stopped, then continued, "If you don't believe it, you can try it on the others." After a while, the rest of the 11 students all mastered the technique for pull-ups. Most of them learned it after only one practice session. Very few of them needed to practice more than once to master it. This made Dai realize that the system was no joke. The technique for pull-ups was not that difficult, but it was, however, impossible for normal people to learn it after trying it only once. Athletes or dancers who had been trained professionally spent less time than the average person when learning a new movement. This was because their bodies had better flexibility and compatibility. It took a longer time for obese people to learn a new movement than the normal people because they possessed poor flexibility and coordination. Of course, there was always exception. Jinbao Hong, for example, was a well-known agile chubby. Considering his shape, he deserved words of praise like genius because of his flexibility and agility. But geniuses were not everywhere. If it had just been Zheming Dai could take it as coincidence. But all 12 students were like this. It took them no time for them to master the technique for a pull-up. It couldn't be that all 12 people were geniuses. The only explanation was that the coaching system really ruled. The coaching system really works. I can't believe that God has given me such an incredible cheating system. If everything goes well, these chubbies can all get full scores on the high school PE entrance exam in 2 weeks. Dai thought to himself. Chapter 4. Refund. The session lasted 3 hours, from 8:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. After 3 hours of training, the 12 students could finish several repetitions of pull-ups. Zheming, who was the best among them, could even do 3 pull-ups consecutively. This was the result of just a 3-hour training session. Given the fact that these fat potatoes couldn't even finish one pull-up originally, Dai's training deserved a compliment of incredible. Even Dai himself was shocked by the outcome that morning. Having majored in sports training himself, he knew how unbelievable his training result was. Even if you had gathered all the best coaches, you would not be able to achieve what Dai had accomplished. "Well, I can see that you are shocked by the training effects," said the system. This is the training result of a top-level coach. Even national athletes could make a big leap forward following a top-level coach, let alone ordinary people. So according to you, the results differ between national athletes and ordinary people? Dai asked, catching the point. There is a difference. A very big one actually. Even if you don't have the top-level coach trial card, you can still expect a good result training ordinary people as a newbie coach. However, the same result can't be ensured if you train athletes, explained the Golden Head. I understand that the training result gets better as the level of the coach gets better. But I didn't expect that there's a restriction on trains according to the level of the coach, said Dai. The Golden Head nodded. This restriction appears on the limitation of the training result. The better an athlete is, the higher the level of the coach must be. If the level of the coach is too low, the training result will be very inconspicuous, which could even be close to none. For example, a newbie coach like you would make no impacts on national athletes. On the opposite, if a high-level coach trains a low-level athlete, the result would be much better. So if I'm understanding correctly, I could make those fatties to 10 pull-ups if I could upgrade my coach level? There are 10,000 students who take the high school PE entrance exam in Yuzo City. I can open a training class for the high school PE entrance exam and make a big fortune from it. Dai said excitedly. No way. Even if you upgrade yourself to the highest level, you still couldn't make them do 10 pull-ups in one day. Sports training is limited by individual physical ability. For example, that Zheming Huang can only finish 5 pull-ups today according to his physical limitations. Even a top-level coach couldn't help him do more than 5. Your training result so far is the best-case scenario, the Golden Head explained. Dai Li felt a little upset now that his dream of making a fortune had been broken. The system said, the better the training result is, the more experience you will gain. I suggest you make the most of these 14 days and make yourself to level -3, which will be a sophomore coach. After 14 days, once the card is expired, it will take you more time to level up.
Right.
The experience. With the system reminding him, he remembered the empirical value. He entered the system immediately and saw that the column for empirical value had raised from 0 and hundredths to 6 and hundredths. I have already gained 6 points of empirical value, which means I can get 12 points per day. Then I just need 8 or 9 days to upgrade. 14-day top-level trial card is definitely enough, Dai Li calculated in his mind. I don't think so. Don't forget that it's Sunday today. That's why you have an entire day. That's also why you are able to get a high empirical value. Normally on weekdays, you'll only have 2 hours after school. At that point, you would not be able to get 12 points per day, the system reminded him. This news made Dai Li quite depressed. During the training in the afternoon, the fatties were still making rapid progress. For example, Zheming Huang could already finish 5 pull-ups if he pushed himself. Even the biggest of the bunch, Kong Wu, could manage to do 3. According to the scoring criteria of Yuzo City's high school PE entrance exam, 6 consecutive pull-ups would reach the standard to pass the exam. And according to Dai Li's calculation, all 12 students would manage to pass the exam after 2 or 3 days of training. The training ended at 5 p.m. The exhausted students dragged their bodies and waved goodbye to Dai Li. However, Dai Li didn't leave right away. He counted the box of equipment that they borrowed so he could return it to the youth activity center. Nothing lost. Time to get ready to go home. As Dai Li got ready to move the box to the trolley, he saw a few familiar people walking up to him. He looked carefully and found that all of them were the students he had taught today. There were 7 or 8 of them, and a few adults followed. 1 or 2 of them looked very familiar to Dai Li. That lady should be Zhenya Zhu's mother. I met her this morning when I was welcoming the students with Jiana Chen. And the man right next to her should be Zheming Huang's father. The person following him is someone's parent too. Why have all the parents gathered here all of a sudden? Is it because the training result was so incredible today that they wanted to say thank you to me? Dai Li was filled with happiness. What should I say in return for their grateful words? You are welcome. I'm just doing my job. Your child worked really hard today. I'm sure he will make great progress after all, something like that. As he mulled it over, the parents were already standing in front of him, looking at him from head to toe. You are Teacher Li? Zheming Huang's father asked. Dai Li suddenly felt nervous. He could tell from Zheming Huang's father's tone that there was no good news. It actually sounded like he wanted to pick a fight. Normally people wouldn't use this tone if they wanted to show their gratefulness. And the fact that Zheming Huang's father's face was obviously showing his anger. What's wrong? What did I do? Is it because he is not satisfied with the training result? The fact that someone who has grown as big as Zheming Huang managed to do 5 pull-ups is already a miracle. He is still not satisfied. I didn't abuse his son. Why is he so angry? Dai Li nodded with a baffled look. Yes, I'm Dai Li. Where's Coach Xu Yongzhao? Asked Zheming Huang's dad. Xu Yongzhao? Who's that? I've never heard of him, Dai Li said. Today's my first day of work and I'm afraid there are a lot of colleagues that I don't know. First day of work. Look at you, I bet you're a student who just graduated, said Zhenya Zhu's mom, who was standing right next to him. Well, I'll graduate in a month, Dai Li answered honestly. His response caused a disturbance among the parents. Liar. You're lying, training a class without knowing anything. You promised us that there would be a professional coach. Now we only have a student who hasn't graduated from college. And this is his first day on the job. You must be kidding me. I told you that Coach Chow is not with talent education. This program is a fraud. How could he mislead our children like this? You promised us that there would be a professional coach when we registered. Give us the money back. Our $3,000 RMB training fee.
Right.
We demand that talent education refund our money. Refund. This is fraud. A refund is not enough. You should pay us back 3 times over. Dali had no idea what he should do now. Chapter 5. Retain customers. What the hell is this? This is the first day of my first job and these parents have come together to ask for a refund. Dali stood there unsure of what to do. For a senior student who was going to graduate this year, he had no social experience that could have taught him how to deal with this. He came back from his thoughts to face the music. Everybody please calm down. This is my first day and I have no idea what happened. Please give me a moment. I will make a phone call to verify what exactly is going on. He took out his phone and entered Jiana Chen's number. Professor Chen, this is Dali. There's a situation here and I have a lot of parents asking for a refund, Dali told him straightforwardly. Jiana Chen was silent for a few seconds on the other end of the phone, then sighed. I knew that would happen. They are asking for a refund again. It sounds like Jiana Chen already knew that the parents would ask for a refund. And he said again, which means this has happened before, thought Dali. He felt like he was involved in something terrible. He hesitated, then asked. The parents said that they were looking for Xu Yongshao. Do you know him? Xu Yongshao. Jiana Chen repeated the name with a tone of detestation. He sighed after a while and continued, tell those parents to bring the receipt they received when they paid the bill, and to come and get their refund. There must be some secrets, thought Dali. Then he asked, Professor Chen, could you please just tell me the truth about what is happening?
All right.
There will be more and more parents who want refunds. Eventually there might be no students at all. There is no need for me to hide anything from you. Jiana Chen went on to tell him what was going on. This training class for the high school PE entrance exam organized by Talent Education had originally hired a professional coach from the municipal sports team. That was the coach Xu Yongshao the parents were referring to. Reputation was the most important thing if you wanted to start a training class. Most of the parents had brought their children here just because of the well-known teacher. It was very easy to attract a lot of students simply by having someone famous. There was no doubt that a professional coach from a municipal sports team deserved to have that reputation according to the parents. Talent Education had used him as an eye-catching promotion. They printed Xu Yongshao's resume on the promotional page. Many of the parents sent their children here just because of the words professional coach from a municipal sports team. What Talent Education had never considered was that Xu Yongshao would quit the job the day before the training class was supposed to begin. He had just made a phone call yesterday morning saying he was out. Jiana Chen had asked for information hastily, and learned that coach Xu Yongshao had hopped to another training school. The school he had left for was SA Student Education. It was said that people who were involved in the same business were enemies. SA Student Education and Talent Education had competed for years. To scramble for students, they played every trick. This time SA Student Education had made a relentless blow and caught Talent Education off guard. This kind of job-hopping behavior was very immoral. The training class was supposed to start the next day, and Xu Yongshao had quit the day before. It was obviously a plot to bring down Talent Education. They could never find someone to replace Xu Yongshao in such a short time. In fact, Xu Yongshao had colluded with SA Student Education from the beginning. He didn't leave Talent Education until the last minute so he could purposely put Talent Education into a predicament. He had quit the job knowing that the class was going to start the next day. Through switching jobs, Xu Yongshao had also brought many of the students with him. Most of the parents had come for the professional coach, and they asked for the refund as soon as they had found that there would be no professional coach since he had quit. There's supposed to be 30 students in the Talent Education program, yet more than half of them had left with Xu Yongshao. The 12 students left were those whose parents were uninformed. That was why they hadn't quit the class yet. Reputation was the key for the tutoring institutions like Talent Education. There would be no doubt that an institution would lose its credibility. It had taken the parents' money and then told them that the class was cancelled. No one would trust the institution anymore if it were to start a new program in the future. The training class had to be continued, even if there was only one student left, just for the sake of reputation. However, Jianna Chen had no time to find a PE teacher, so he had put up a poster just to try his luck. Dai Li happened to see that poster, and came to apply for the job the same day. Jianna Chen would normally never hire a student who hadn't graduated yet if there had been time to find a proper teacher. However, the class was scheduled to begin the next day, so there was no time to find someone else. He had to hire Dai Li. That was how Dai Li had gotten a job easily. But the parents didn't approve of Dai Li. They had come for the professional coach. After the first day of training, they asked their children how it was and found out that there was no professional coach. They had come here to figure out what was going on, only to find out that Dai Li was a student who hadn't even graduated yet. Of course, they felt like they had been fooled, which led to the situation now. They were asking for the refund, and even compensation for their trouble. Okay, I see. So I was just a replacement for this emergency. No wonder Jianna Chen only checked my student card and then offered me this job. It was all because there was no one else. Well, that coach Xu Yongzhao must have been really discredited. Dai Li finally understood what had happened and why he had gotten a job so smoothly. However, the next moment, Dai Li suddenly realized that one student meant 500 yuan in commission. There were 6 parents here. If they all asked for the refund, he would lose 3.000 yuan in income. After he thought about it further, he realized he would even lose the salary of 1,200 yuan as a trial. Talent Education had no reason to keep him if all the students dropped off from this program. No, I can't let him give them refunds. I will be unemployed if they all leave. Dai Li mulled it over for a few seconds and figured out what he was going to say. Dai Li walked in front of the parents and began. Everybody please take it easy. I just found out what happened. Coach Xu Yongzhao is no longer in our talent education program. But you still have me. What do we need you for? Go get your diploma first. Someone amongst the parents said. My major is sports training. This is what I've been studying. Speaking of the result of training, I have confidence that he is no better than me, Dai Li said. You gotta be kidding me. The parents said with contempt. From their point of view, they couldn't understand how an undergraduate student had the nerve to compare himself with a professional coach from a municipal sports team. You are Teacher Li, right? It's good that young people have faith in themselves. But don't reach for what's beyond your capability. Coach Xu Yongzhao is a professional coach from a municipal sports team. An undergraduate student like you should be modest and learn from him, a parent with a beard said. But I really can improve your children's scores, Dai Li said immediately. With the help of the top-level coach card, Dai Li was superior to anyone else in the world when it came to training results. This gave Dai Li the confidence to speak like this. However, this kind of confidence was seen as conceited and arrogant by the parents. Let's stop wasting our time here with him. He is just an undergraduate student, and this is his first day. He knows nothing. Let's get our refunds and sign up for another training class. Our children can't be held up, said Jenny Azu's mother, dragging our son. Zheng Huang's father also added, I saved Coach Xu Yongzhao's number when I signed up. After we get our refunds, I'll call him to see where he is and if he is still coaching any classes. The day I signed up here, he promised me that after the 2-week training, he could have my son doing at least 5 to 6 pull-ups. Maybe my son will be able to pass the exam with his help. Dai Li saw a glimmer of hope after he heard what Zheng Huang's dad said. Wait a moment. He said. You said Coach Xu Yongzhao promised you that he could make Zheng Huang do 5 pull-ups after the 2-week program. Zheng Huang's dad turned around and said, What? You don't believe it? He is a real professional coach. It's normal that he is better than you at training. Look how you scared Teacher Li, said Jenny Azu's mother, who was standing right next to him. The real professional coach sounds so incredible compared to the others. It seems like he really has talent in coaching if he can make promises like that. Could you please check for my son as well and see if there are any vacancies in his class once you contact him? I want to send my son there too. It's destiny that we all gathered together here, man. Don't forget us if you manage to contact him. Coach Chow also promised me that he would make my son pass the exam as well, another parent said anxiously. Zheng Huang's father had become the most welcome person here now. Dai Li took one step forward and continued asking, "Are you sure?" Coach Xu Yongshao said he could make Zheng Huang do 5 pull-ups in 2 weeks. What do you mean? Are you looking down upon my son? Zheng Huang's dad got very angry. He continued, "My son is a little big. But he is not that bad. You don't believe he could do 5 pull-ups after a 2-week training? Just because you couldn't do it doesn't mean the others can't." The other parents echoed his words. He is a professional coach, different from you. It might be hard for you to believe. Maybe you should just go back to school and study harder from the beginning. Maybe after 10 or 20 years you can reach Coach Chow's level. Who knows? Their sarcastic words didn't make Dai Li feel angry. On the contrary, he sighed with relief and smiled. If what you said is true, then I'm not worrying anymore. The next second, Dai Li pointed at Zheng Huang and said, "Zheng Huang, get on the horizontal bar and show your dad the result of our first day of training." Dai Li made it extra clear and loud when he said the words first day. Chapter 6. I only need 1 day. All children wanted to perform the best they could in front of their parents. This was also true for Zheng Huang. He walked to the horizontal bar without any hesitation when Dai Li called his name. He really wanted to show his dad how well he could do. He looks like he's 75 kilograms, almost the same as my son. Is he going to do a pull-up? Do you think he can even finish one? I doubt it. I feel my son is a little slimmer than him. My son couldn't even manage to do 1 pull-up. The teacher Li just told him to show his training results from the first day. Maybe he can do 1 pull-up. 1 pull-up means nothing. You need 6 to pass the exam. Their discussion hit Zheng Huang's father hard. A complicated feeling of depression, shame, and expectation rose up from his heart. If he can't even manage to do 1 pull-up in front of all these parents, it could be really embarrassing. I hope Zheng can finish at least 1, thought Zheng Huang's dad, sighing silently. Zheng Huang had already walked to the horizontal bar while they were talking. Dai Li shouted, "Recall all the points of the movement. Don't get nervous, just think of it as normal training." Zheng Huang nodded silently. He reached out his arms and jumped slightly to grab the horizontal bar. Everyone's attention was on Zheng Huang. He hung on the horizontal bar with his arms. Then he squeezed with his power and finished a perfect pull-up. Wow, he really did 1 pull-up. His movement seems good enough to reach the standard. And he doesn't look very exhausted. That move looks very skillful. I bet this kid practiced hard the whole day. He received the result he deserved. Zheng Huang's father heard the discussion and felt very proud. That's my boy. Good job. I'll let you play on the computer for 1 hour tonight since you didn't shame your old man. Zheng Huang's father thought proudly. However, Zheng Huang didn't get off the horizontal bar. Instead, he gave it another shot. A second one. He did 2 pull-ups in total. I didn't expect that fat potato to be able to do 2 pull-ups. Many of the parents spoke with envy. Some of the parents even patted their children's shoulders and said, "Look at him. He is as heavy as you. Even he can do 2 pull-ups." Zheng Huang's father didn't look worried anymore. Instead, he was flushed with success. His own son was enjoying his moment of fame, so, of course, he felt happy. As his dad was about to praise him, Zheng Huang finished another pull-up. 3 times. He did 3 pull-ups. No way. How could such a fat kid do 3 pull-ups? Many of the parents sounded very surprised, and also a bit jealous. However, Zheng Huang had no intention of stopping. He kept trying, and finished a 4th pull-up. He did another one. It's already the 4th one. Zhenyazu's mother said surprisedly. But this time, she got no response. All the other parents were staring at Zheng Huang with their eyes wide open. It seemed like they couldn't believe what was happening in front of them. As the fourth pull-up took more energy from Zheng Huang. You could tell from his movement that it was not as easy as the first one. But the fourth pull-up was not the end. Zheng Huang rested for 3 to 4 seconds, then began to move again. For the fifth pull-up, Zheng Huang's arms trembled because he was trying very hard to use his strength. The muscles in his arms were all contracted, and the movement this time was obviously very hard for him. He could fall off at any time. However, he gritted his teeth and did not show any intention of giving up. "Go, my boy." Zheng Huang's father clenched his fists tightly as he cheered silently for his son. The next moment, Zheng Huang's jaw finally went over the horizontal bar. His fifth pull-up was completed. All the parents looked at Zheng Huang and felt so shocked that their faces looked dull. How could a person as fat as Zheng Huang do 5 pull-ups? Zheng Huang. "Get off," Dai said. He loosened his hands and fell to the ground immediately with his mouth opened wide, trying to catch his breath. He had reached his limit of 5 pull-ups. Dai took one step forward and stood right in front of Zheng Huang's father. "Are you satisfied with the result of the first day of training?" he asked straightforwardly. "What?" Obviously Zheng Huang's father was so out of sorts that he couldn't give a response right away. Dai continued, "You just said that it would take Coach Xu Yongzhao 2 weeks to make Zheng Huang do 5 pull-ups, didn't you?" Dai repeated his words. However, the same sentence sounded so different now to the others. 5 pull-ups. Compared to the Coach Zhao, who said he needed 2 weeks to train the students. "I only asked for 1 day." Dai's voice echoed and fell into the ears of the parents. It was like a hammer had hit their chest. They couldn't help but stand in shock. To make Zheng Huang do 5 pull-ups would take even a professional coach 2 weeks. However, the young undergraduate had only taken 1 day to achieve it. The difference in time left an impression like a dragon was waving them in a river. Their hearts couldn't come down for a while. Could it be that Coach Xu Yongzhao was not skilled enough? Of course not. Xu Yongzhao had taught in municipal sports, which meant he was qualified enough. At least in Yuzhou City, you could even call him a top-level coach. Otherwise he wouldn't have even been hired by the municipal sports team. It was not because Coach Xu Yongzhao was not good enough, it was that this young man right in front of them was so good that he was more qualified than Coach Xu Yongzhao. How could that be possible? An undergraduate student is way better than a professional coach from the municipal sports team. Some of the parents still couldn't believe it, even though they had seen it with their eyes. Maybe he is a swindler that they hired to fool us. Maybe they are just acting. A voice said. Although it was said very quietly, everyone still heard it. "Watch your mouth," Zheng Huang's father argued, feeling very insulted. "No one knows if you are a swindler or not except yourself," the voice echoed again. Everybody then realized that it was Zhenya Zhu's mother. The one who had argued the most for the refund before had been her as well. She spoke with sarcasm, and looked like she would need some more convincing. Dai didn't pay much attention to it. He smiled and said, "Zhenya Zhu, get on the horizontal bar and show your mom whether I hired a swindler or not." Chapter 7. Convinced 1, 2, 3, 4, even that fat potato was able to do 4 pull-ups. And he was halfway to the 5th one. If he had tried harder maybe he could have made it. Zhenya Zhu got on the horizontal bar and finished 4 pull-ups in one go. He ran out of strength when trying to do the 5th one, so he only made it halfway, but it was still very impressive. The parents were not that shocked because they had already seen Zheng Huang's performance. The person who felt most embarrassed was Zhenya Zhu's mom. A minute ago she had said Dai had hired a swindler. Now her own son had done 4.5 pull-ups. It couldn't be that she herself was hired as a cover-up. Being parents, they clearly knew what their children were capable of. Zhenya Zhu's mother knew that he couldn't even do 1 pull-up normally with his own ability. It was unbelievable that he could do 4.5 pull-ups after 1 day's training. It was strong evidence that Dai was really good at training. "Son, how many can you do?" One of the parents asked his child in a low voice. "I can do 4, 2, the teenager said. He sounded very proud. The other parents also started to ask their children and they all got a very satisfying answer. All the parents looked at Diley differently now. Their disdain had turned into trust and admiration. A few minutes ago, Diley had just been some undergraduate student who knew nothing in their eyes. Now he was a training master to them. All the changes on those parents' faces didn't escape Diley's eyes. He started, "You all think that I'm too young and have no experience, that I must be worse than others at training. But sports training is not all about age or experience. The training results are more related to science. The more scientific the training is, the better the result is. If the training is not scientific, then the result might fall behind, and the sports ability might be worse than before. What's worse, athletes could get injured. My major is sports training, which includes courses in scientific training. In fact, the scientific training that I learned in college is also a kind of experience. It summarized all the successful experiences, and helped me absorb the essence of them and leave out the drugs. After the selection and arrangement of experiences, they put them in the textbook for us to study." Diley exhaled deeply after finishing his speech. All the parents nodded, agreeing with Diley's point of view. Zhenyazu's mother was the first to respond. "Coach Lee makes a very good point. There are many coaches on sports teams who have been teaching for 20 or 30 years who may not even have high school diplomas. When it comes to scientific training, we should look for these young people who have been to college." Maybe she was trying to make up for what she had said about Diley being a swindler. Zhenyazu's mother had changed her attitude to show her sincerity, and was the first one to support Diley. Diley felt it was almost time to go, so he said, "All right, everybody, it's pretty late now. If you still want to quit the class, just go to the talent education office. There will be someone who can give you the refund. If you still want to stay in my class, come here on time tomorrow." Quit the class? Refund? A few minutes ago, that was what those parents were expecting. But only fools would quit the class now. No. No way we are going to quit the class. My mind can only be put at ease if my son can follow Coach Lee and learn. Zheng Huang's father patted his chest and said, "How could we quit the class when there is such an incredible coach like Coach Lee? Coach, please pay more attention to my son. Coach Lee, please feel free to hit my son if he does something wrong." Jianna Chen looked at the clock on the wall. It was already 8 o'clock at night, but nobody was coming for a refund. What's wrong? There should be plenty of parents who want refunds. Where are they? Is there a traffic jam? No way. It's close enough that they can just get here by foot, Jianna Chen mumbled. Diley was partly to blame for the confusion Jianna Chen was experiencing. If he had some working experience, he would have known that he should have called Jianna Chen first to relay what had just happened and to explain why the parents wouldn't ask for refunds anymore, and then to ask for the credit. However, Diley's working experience was close to none, so he went back home after solving the problem without letting Jianna Chen know, not knowing better. This made Jianna Chen wait a few hours. Could it be that Lee didn't explain it clearly to the parents? Jianna Chen couldn't wait anymore, so he called Diley. "Hello, Lee, this is Jianna Chen. Have you managed to tell the parents who want refunds to bring their receipts?" "You did." "Then why there is nobody here?" "What? They quit asking for the refunds? All of them? For what?" "Because they are satisfied with your training. You say they would love to stay and continue learning." Jianna Chen hung up the phone, but after a few minutes he still couldn't understand the situation here. His mind was a mess and he still had a confused look. What was that? They are satisfied with his training results? This sounds so unbelievable. Did Lee cast a spell on them or something? The next day was Monday. Because the students had to go to school during the day, the training would start at 17:30 and last until 19:30, lasting 2 hours total. All the students arrived on time. Diley changed the training focus. The day before, only pull-ups had been on the training list. However, that was not the only requirement of the PE exam. Students also had to complete the standing long jump in 1000 m race. Diley decided to alternate between the training of these 3 activities. Pull-ups were mainly about the strength of the upper limbs, while standing long jump was about the power and strength of the legs. The two subjects did not influence each other. The 1000 m race in track and field was put in the category of middle distance race, which tested endurance. A long-distance race was an actual test of one's endurance, but considering the physical abilities of middle school students, the 1000 m race was already long enough. Diley wouldn't let his training get the better of him. He was a sports training major, after all. He had gained essential knowledge and skills in teaching effectively the effect of sports on the body and professional training methods. That was more than enough for him to train these middle school students. In the enrollment office of SA Education, in front of the manager of enrollment, there sat a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was of average height with tan skin. He had small eyes, a flat nose, and sharp jawline. He was not good-looking. This was Coach Shuyun Zhao. The manager of enrollment was full of smiles. He poured Shuyun Zhao a cup of tea and said, "Coach Zhao, you said that you would attract students from talent education the other day. Our training class has already been going for 3 or 4 days, but the students haven't come yet." "They haven't. There are no students today again." Shuyun Zhao stopped and asked himself. "That's impossible. All those parents must already know that I left talent education and came here. I asked about it and found out that talent education found someone to replace you right after you left. It seems like that new coach managed to convince all the students to stay." Shuyun Zhao frowned after hearing his words. He thought about it, then said, "I have the numbers of a few parents that I saved during the enrollment period. I'll ask them what happened." Chapter 8. Looking for trouble, some of the parents had exchanged numbers with Coach Shuyun Zhao when they had enrolled at talent education. Although Shuyun Zhao had hopped to another job, he had kept the numbers. He picked up his phone and dialed one of them. "Hello, are you Zheming Huang's parent?" "Yes, this is Shuyun Zhao, the coach of the municipal sports team. Your child is a little big, but he still has a chance to pass the high school PE entrance exam if we train him harder. There are only 2 weeks left before the exam. If we don't start the professional training as soon as possible, it might be too late to, I'm sorry." "In the training class at talent education." "Okay, I didn't make myself very clear. I'm no longer with talent education. I'm teaching at SA student education." "What? Your son can do 7 pull-ups?" Shuyun Zhao hung up the phone and snorted. He must be bluffing. Why didn't he just tell me that he didn't want to come instead of making up such a naive excuse? Look at his fat son. 7 pull-ups? Come on. Shuyun Zhao dialed another number. "So you want to stay at talent education?" "No offense, but there's only one chance at the high school PE entrance exam in one's life, and sports make up 60 points. If you come to my class and join the training, I can at least promise your son gets 36 points. Maybe even 40 points if he is lucky. Full score. That's never going to happen. Look at your son's weight. He needs at least a year of training before that can happen." "No, I'm not looking down upon your son. That comes from my experience after all these years of being a coach. Forget experience and talk about scientific training." "I know nothing about scientific training." "How dare you say that?" Zhenyazu's mother was harsh and mean when she spoke. Shuyun Zhao almost fought with her over the phone. He was so pissed off after the call. He dialed the 3rd number. You shouldn't expect an angry person to speak with a soft tone. He spoke as if he was going to explode any second. Regardless of his tone or attitude, he sounded very aggressive. "Hello, is this Coach Li's parent?" "This is Shuyun Zhao. What is that don't take on the work if you don't have the ability comment supposed to mean? You'd better make it clear." "What? I'm not as good as others." Shuyun Zhao got the same answer from everyone else after dialing a few other numbers. All the parents wanted their children to stay with talent education. Some of them were polite enough to say thank you before hanging up. Others came close to arguing and calling him names through the phone. There was even someone who had said Shuyun Zhao was not qualified enough. After all the calls, he felt very resentful. Once he had calmed down, he realized it was strange that all the parents had rejected him and chosen to stay in talent education. It had to be because talent education had somehow made those parents satisfied. It also meant that the new coach they hired was not just someone off the street. Maybe the coach they hired is another famous coach. But I'm sure he is not from our municipal sports team, otherwise I would have known him. Maybe he is from a sports school. Or someone who works for the college. Who the hell is he that he was able to make all those parents willing to stay? I have to find someone to ask about it. Xu Yongzhao thought about it and began to contact his connections right away. After a while, he found out that the coach talent education had hired was not a famous coach who worked for a sports school or college, but an undergraduate student who had majored in sports. How could an undergraduate student win over students in competition with me? Just wait, I'll show you who I am and leave you with no students, said Xu Yongzhao. To Xu Yongzhao, it seemed like they wanted to steal his money and compete for students. He made a living off getting commissions from students. One student meant one commission, one less student meant less income. As a professional coach, his commission per student was 1.000 yuan. 12 students meant 12.000 yuan, which tripled his salary for 1 month. He didn't mind looking for trouble for 12.000 yuan. Kong Kong Wu, lean forward. Push the ball of your foot against the ground when you jump, Dai Li shouted. The students were divided into two groups on the training ground. One group was practicing the standing long jump, while the other was practicing the 1,000-meter race. Kong Kong Wu was definitely the biggest student among them. His height was only about 160 centimeters, yet he weighed more than 90 kilograms. If you looked at him from afar, you would think he was a giant meatball. He was also one of the most difficult students for Dai Li to train. Dai Li usually spent more time on Kong Kong Wu just to help him make more progress. There was a small group of people walking towards him. Xu Yongzhao was leading them. He pointed out different things as he walked. Behind him were a few people who seemed to be parents. He spoke as he walked, saying, "There are countless training classes in Yuzhou City. Training classes for the high school entrance PE exam makes up a big part of them. As far as I am concerned, there are dozens of sports training education schools that are renting places in this youth activity center, and both seedlings and weeds grow together among them. Some of them are here just to take up space. Many of the so-called sports coaches don't even have the most basic qualifications. It's so clear that all they care about is swindling money. Money is not that important. The most important thing is that someone else's quest for money wastes the time of our children. The high school entrance exam is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. If you fail the exam just because you went to an unqualified sports training education school and met a worthless coach, imagine how sad that would be. You might even lose the chance to enter a key high school. Don't you think so?" All the parents following Xu Yongzhao nodded to show their support after listening to his words. You really need to learn how to choose a training class. The first thing you should do is check the coach's qualifications. For example, the training coach right in front of us looks like he's in his early 20s. He is even younger than some of the athletes that I have trained, and obviously it's a bad choice to give your children to people like him. He is just here to fool everyone. I bet you don't want to waste your children's time on him. Xu Yongzhao pointed at Dai Li, who was not far from him, raising his voice on purpose. The group caught Dai Li's attention right before they entered the room. Dai Li did not miss a word of what Xu Yongzhao said. I don't even know this guy. We've never met before. Why is he saying that I'm wasting these children's time when we barely know each other? There are even a few parents following after him. They are coming for trouble. Dai Li's look turned very serious and angry. How could he tolerate this when they had come all this way, right in front of him, to look for trouble? He took one step forward without holding back his anger and said, "Who are you talking about?" Chapter 9. Misleading the students. Xu Yongzhao had indeed come here looking for trouble. The reason he had brought a big group of parents was to insult Dai Li in front of other people. And since SA Student Education had also rented a training ground in the Youth Activity Center, which was located on the other side of the sports field, it didn't take Xu Yongzhao much time to find Dai Li. In fact, Xu Yongzhao was just an ordinary coach for the municipal sports team. He was not outstanding at all, otherwise he wouldn't be doing a part-time job for some training education class. The real incredible coaches were all busy taking athletes to competitions. They had no time to train a bunch of middle school students for the high school PE entrance exam. There was an old saying that you should never push somebody too hard, otherwise it would be awkward when you had to meet them again later. Xu Yongzhao might have given Dai Li more respect and would have tried to avoid direct conflict if Dai Li was from the sports school or college. Xu Yongzhao wouldn't defend someone even if that person was a sports teacher in middle school. However, Dai Li was just some undergraduate student whom Xu Yongzhao didn't care about at all. Each student meant a commission, and he didn't mind defending Dai Li for that. If he could win over the students in this bid, then he could get more commissions. 12 students meant 12.000 yuan. Xu Yongzhao was not just here looking for trouble, he was also looking for money. Xu Yongzhao's speech about misleading the students and such was all said to Dai Li on purpose. He wanted to attract Dai Li's attention and then insult him. He knew his plot had succeeded when he saw Dai Li question him. He smiled viciously and looked at Dai Li from head to toe. He said with disdain, "Young man, I can tell that you are in your early 20s. I suppose that you are just a few years older than those students, right? Isn't that misleading the students if people like you work as coaches? Ability has nothing to do with age. What matters is the result of training. Age doesn't represent skill. Look at you, people like you who are older than me but still know nothing can be found everywhere." Dai Li retorted back, trading insults. "My son, you should not talk to me like that. Do you have any idea who I am?" Xu Yongzhao answered his own question immediately and said, "I'm Xu Yongzhao." Xu Yongzhao. That's him. No wonder he came looking for trouble. Dai Li was not a big fan of him. Never mind that there was a competition between them simply because they worked in the same industry, Dai Li questioned Xu Yongzhao's morals after all he had done to talent education. Dai Li felt that he didn't have to be polite to people like him who had no integrity. He smiled and said, "I know you. You are the one who escaped, Xu Yongzhao." "Escaped? What do you mean?" Xu Yongzhao asked, trying to look dignified. "You want me to say everything? Okay, I showed you my respect, but it seems like you don't need it." He sighed purposely and spoke to the parents who were behind Xu Yongzhao. "Coach Xu Yongzhao used to be in our talent education program. But then he felt he was not qualified enough to teach our students, so he ran away to SA student education." "Nonsense!" Xu Yongzhao shouted angrily. "Nonsense! That was not nonsense. You were here in talent education during the enrollment period. But then after you saw that our students were very difficult to train, you realized you wouldn't be able to help them get high scores, so you escaped. Yes, I admit that our students were a little big, and the training might be more difficult. However, you shouldn't have given up before even trying." Dai Li continued, making up stories as he went along. "That is bullshit. You are just making up stories." Xu Yongzhao seemed to be a little embarrassed. "Come on. Even if I could make up a story, I wouldn't need to. You can ask the others if Xu Yongzhao was in talent education before or not, that way you'll know if I'm telling the truth. And I've got witnesses too." Dai Li said as he waved at Zheming Huang to ask him to come around. He patted Zheming Huang's shoulder and looked up at Xu Yongzhao. "Coach Zhao, this is our student in talent education. You must have met him before, haven't you? You are still in our talent education when he signed up." Xu Yongzhao felt that all the parents were looking at him with doubt. He didn't expect Dai Li to be such a smooth talker. He was put into a defensive position just by Dai Li's few sentences full of nonsense. "I did. So what? I was in talent education when he signed up." Xu Yongzhao shouted and continued, "I was an athlete for more than 10 years, and I have been coaching since then for 7 or 8 years. I've trained professional athletes. Even the professional athletes from municipal sports teams could not daunt me, let alone some middle school students. There is no need for me to escape. I just hopped to another job with a higher salary offer. That's it." The parents behind Xu Yongzhao discussed his words quietly. Coach Zhao is making sense. He is the coach from the municipal sports team. How could a few middle school students daunt him? Even professional athletes were a piece of cake for Coach Zhao, let alone some slightly overweight students. I was almost buying that young fellow's words. Considering Coach Zhao's ability, there is no possibility that he would be afraid. It must be that he hopped to another job for higher pay. Dai was not in a hurry to explain himself. He patted Zheng Huang's shoulder and said, "Coach Zhao, I remember that you did not only meet this student, but also promised him when he enrolled that you would help him achieve 5 or 6 pull-ups after 2 weeks of training. Is that true?" Xu Yongzhao remembered, but didn't admit it immediately. He worried that it might be a trap Dai had set for him. He thought about it again and found a problem with his promise. He nodded and said, "Yes," even though he was a little big. "But I believe he would be able to do 6 pull-ups before the high school PE entrance exam if he came to me for training." Xu Yongzhao said 6 instead of 5 or 6 to show his ability. The discussion among those behind him flared up again. 6 pull-ups. That means 12 points, which is the passing line. He deserves to be a professional coach from the municipal sports team if he can make such a big child do 6 pull-ups. I bet the other coaches would never be able to achieve it. We made the right choice choosing Coach Zhao. I'd be so satisfied if my son could do 6 pull-ups in the high school entrance examination. Xu Yongzhao listened intently and felt very proud. "You misled the students," Dai suddenly said. "What did you say?" Xu Yongzhao asked in reply. "I said you were the one who misled the students." Dai stopped for a second and then continued, "I repeat back to you the words you said to me minutes ago, without any changes. You can only help students do 6 pull-ups in 2 weeks. Isn't that a waste of time for the students?" Xu Yongzhao laughed after hearing Dai's words. "Son, are you a fool or are you just playing one? 6 pull-ups in only 2 weeks is not normal. Only I, Xu Yongzhao, dared to give that promise. Other coaches would never be able to guarantee like this. That's why I say you are misleading the students." Dai patted Zheng Huang's shoulders and instructed, "Get on the horizontal bar and show them how many pull-ups you can do." Chapter 10. Who's misleading the students? People started to gather. Most of those were parents who had come to pick up their children. There were also some older people who were talking a walk after dinner. Either way, those who gathered had some time to spare. They saw the crowd and came to find out what had happened. It didn't take long for them to begin the discussion amongst themselves. "Why are there so many people here? What happened? This is the Youth Activity Center. What else can it be? Those training education schools are competing with each other again to win over students. In that case we have something interesting to watch. I remember there were 2 taekwondo coaches that fought with each other just to win over the students last summer. I've seen those people before." "Oh, right, I think he is a coach from the municipal sports team. But who was that young man in front of him? He looks like a college student." "Maybe he is. Those training schools always hire college students to do part-time jobs. The salary is low, and there's no need to pay them the insurance and everything." At the moment, Zheng Huang had walked up to the horizontal bar and did the first pull-up without pausing. Well, that was not bad. But the first pull-up is always the easiest because you can use the power generated from the lift-off when your hands grab hold of the horizontal bar. After that, however, it will be very difficult, Xu Yongzhao said with disdain. He was speaking as a veteran, as if he was superior to everyone else spectating. Zheng Huang finished 3 consecutive pull-ups right after Xu Yongzhao finished speaking. The smile Xu Yongzhao had originally worn had now disappeared from his face. As a professional sports coach, he could tell that Zheng Huang still had plenty of strength left for more, even after 3 pull-ups. Maybe he really could do 2 more. Even I wouldn't be able to make this fatty do more than 3 pull-ups in such a short period of time. But it seems like he could easily do 2 more. Don't tell me that I'm going to lose this game, Xu Yongzhao thought to himself, having a feeling that it was not going to turn out well for him today. Zheng Huang didn't slow down. He was able to do 5 pull-ups 3 days ago, and after this afternoon's training, he had gotten even better than before. Although the standing long jump in 1000 m race had used up some of his energy, 6 pull-ups wouldn't be a problem for him. Zheng Huang began and completed the 6th pull-up successfully. This time his movement was much faster than before. He had done it quickly because he was running out of power. 6. That's enough to pass, one of the parents said excitedly. In the scoring criteria of Yuzo City's high school entrance PE exam, 6 pull-ups meant passing. Even though it was only 12 points for those who could pass the test, it could still make a drastic difference. For example, there was an enrollment restriction in the high school entrance exam. Many of the key universities wouldn't take students who failed one of the exams, even if the total score achieved a passing grade. Parents didn't only care about their children's scores, but also about the competition with others. For many, it was a matter of honor and reputation. When they talked about their children's scores, getting 0 points and failing were 2 results that could damage their reputation. If a child failed his cultural classes, it was normal for him to get a few punches.
That's impossible.
Xu Yongzhao had lost his confidence as a veteran and looked very pale. He would have never believed this if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes. The parents would have been so happy if a child as fat as Zheming Huang could do 6 pull-ups and pass the exam. However, he himself was not satisfied with the result. He rested for a few seconds, recalled the points of the movement that Dai Li had taught him, and began attempting a 7th pull-up. It was a struggle, but finally, he did the 7th pull-up successfully. This time, many people around couldn't help but marvel at him. Some people even said nice. Zheming Huang quit trying after he finished the 7th pull-up. Dai Li took one step forward and cleared his throat. This student has been training with me for 4 days, including today. 4 days ago, he couldn't even do 1 pull-up. But now he can do 7. I'm pretty sure that he will make even more progress in the following days, and that a full score in pull-ups during the exam will be a realistic goal for him. Full score. Everyone standing around looked at Zheming Huang's bloated figure and found it very difficult to imagine. He was trained by me for only 4 days and now he can do 7 pull-ups. But this coach Zhao. He pointed at Xu Yongzhao, who was right next to him, and continued, he said he needed 2 weeks to train his student to do 6 pull-ups. Now who do you think is misleading the students and wasting their time? Xu Yongzhao's face turned a purplish shade of red. He had just promised in front of everyone that he could get Zheming Huang to 6 pull-ups in 2 weeks, in a conceited tone no less. But now, right in his face, Dai Li proved that he had only needed 4 days to help the students do 7 pull-ups, 1 more than Zhao's promise of 2 weeks training. And he said he was a coach for the municipal sports team. I guess that not all coaches get him because of their abilities. Even a young man is better than him. No wonder it took the athletes from our city so many years to get trained, and they were still rejected by the national team. I guess it's the fault of those coaches. You are right. I just asked the others and heard that this young man is an undergraduate student. Even a student is better than that professional coach. Do you think he bought the title of so-called professional coach? These voices swarmed through Xu Yongzhao's ears and made him embarrassed. He knew that if this spread around, his reputation would be damaged, which might cause many students to quit his training class. Had I known this, I would never have come for trouble. Xu Yongzhao thought sadly. He didn't expect the undergraduate student to be so difficult to deal with. He thought that Dai Li would surrender right after being made aware of his title coach from the municipal sports team, but unfortunately, he ended up coming across a hard nut. How could he train that fatty to do 7 pull-ups in 4 days? Even the coaches I know from the provincial sports team wouldn't be able to achieve that. It seems the kid must have some specialties in pull-up training. At this thought, Xu Yongzhao quit focusing on the pull-ups and sneered, the high school PE entrance exam is not all about pull-ups. There is also the standing long jump in 1000 m race. Even if you get a full score in pull-ups, it means nothing. Without a good score in the other 2 subjects, you won't be able to raise your score anyway. Coach Zhao, it's always easy to say. But what matters is the result. If you are not convinced, we can compete in other events. With the help of the top-level coach card, Dai Li was not afraid of anyone. He was ready to beat Xu Yongzhao, even as an underdog. Sure. Let's compete in standing long jump. Xu Yongzhao stopped for a second and then said confidently, you've held your training classes for 4 days, just like me. Let's pick 1 student from each class and see who can jump further.
What do you say? Why not?
The standing long jump it is, Diley agreed. Look, those training classes are competing with each other again. Now we can kill time by watching that. Who do you think will win in standing long jump? I think that young man has a bigger chance of winning. He is not a nobody. I mean, just look at that fatty who did 7 pull-ups after 4 days of training. You don't really know the situation. Coach Chow is a professional coach for the municipal sports team specializing in standing long jump. He might not be as good as others in pull-up training, but when it comes to the standing long jump, that's what he's known for. How could he lose to the young fellow? No wonder that Coach Zhao asked to compete in standing long jump. That's his specialty. This young guy lacks the experience to compete with a professional coach. He's doomed to fail. Chapter 11. I won again. Xu Yongzhao specialized in the standing long jump as a coach on a municipal sports team. This was the training he was really good at it. It was also why he had challenged Diley in the activity. Diley already knew how incredible the training results were with the help of top-level coach. According to the notification in the system, top-level coach could help ordinary people reach the limits of their physical ability and get the best results from it. This meant that no one could compete with Diley when it came to training ordinary people. That was why Diley was not afraid of Xu Yongzhao's challenge at all. Talent education and SA student education's training fields were not far from each other. They were both in the youth activity center, but not in the same area. Xu Yongzhao had left in a hurry and came back soon with a student. The student was also very big, similar to Zheming Huang. He seemed to be 75 kilograms. Xu Yongzhao patted the student's back and said, "This is my student, Daniel Yu. Who are you going to pick?" Detect. Diley started to detect Daniel Yu's information immediately and got the result from the system. Detecting target, ordinary person, sports ability, 35. 35. That's even worse than the old lady who walked her dog the other day. I bet this Daniel Yu is the best one on his team. Diley relaxed a little bit after seeing that. After 4 days of training, most of Diley's students had a sports ability about 40. Even the biggest one, Kong Wu, had a 38. Diley turned around and mulled over his students. Then he picked Kong Wu and said, "He is the biggest student in my class. I choose him." Kong Wu weighed more than 90 kilograms. However, he was only 160 centimeters tall. If you didn't pay close attention, you might have thought he was a big walking ball. He seemed to need some air every time he took a few steps. His sports ability was only a 19 when he entered the class, which may have been even worse than the dog that old lady was walking. But after only 4 days of training, he had managed to double that number to 38. In the training session this past afternoon, Diley had paid a lot of attention to Kong Wu and taught him about the standing long jump step by step. There was an old saying that if one sharpened their blade just before going into the battle, even if the blade was not sharp enough, it would at least glisten. Diley believed in Kong Wu's ability in the standing long jump. The appearance of Kong Wu attracted all surrounding attention. A student in his 3rd year of middle school with a height of 160 centimeters and weight of 90 kilograms had a tendency to attract people's attention wherever he went. That kid is too fat. He must weigh more than 90 kilograms. Maybe even more than that. Is he even able to jump? I thought this young coach might have some possibility of winning. But now I've changed my mind. He is doomed to fail. Tell me about it. There must be a 15 kilograms to 20 kilograms difference between those two students. The slimmer one will definitely win this game. A conceited look was visible on Xu Yongzhao's face. He might have been a little nervous if Diley had picked a skinnier student. But now he felt like he had already won the game since Diley had chosen the biggest one. Kid, you are embarrassing yourself. Don't blame me if I beat you. Xu Yongzhao's eyes shined coldly. He bent down and said to Daniel Yu, "Do your best, and don't embarrass me." Daniel Yu looked at Kong Wu and nodded confidently. That fatty is Kong Wu. He's from my school. He is the biggest. I'll win the game. Kong Wu's face turned red. Obviously the discussion going on around him made him feel like his face was on fire. He knew he was overweight, and the last thing he wanted to hear was people calling him fat, let alone people around him were talking about and pointing at him, which hurt his feelings. Dai noticed this and encouraged him immediately. Think about Zheng Huang. He's already made people see him in a new light. Now it's your turn. Cheer up. As long as you can perform as usual, you can do it too. Kong Kong-woo nodded silently. He still looked very nervous. Daniel Yu was already standing next to the bunker. He jumped over the 2-meter line easily. 217 meters. A smile emerged from Xu Yongzhao's face. He said, the standing long jump takes 20 points out of the total score. According to the criteria of the high school PE entrance exam, if you can jump over 215 meters, you got 15 points. If we changed it to the 100-point system, it would be equal to 75 points, which translates to a letter grade of B. Xu Yongzhao finished and looked at Dai Li provocatively. Dai Li, however, looked relieved. Kong Kong-woo, there is no need to be nervous now, right? Dai Li smiled. Kong Kong-woo nodded. I thought he would be better than me. I didn't expect that he would only jump 217 meters. That's even worse than me. It's your time to shine, boy. Don't forget the points of the movement that I taught you. Dai Li then asked Kong Kong-woo to go to the competition area. Kong Kong-woo looked very confident as he walked to the bunker. He took a deep breath, then went over the points of the standing long jump without leaving out any details. He made a small space between his legs and bent over his knees a bit. He leaned forward and swung his arms back and forth twice while his knees moved in unison with his arms. The movement is not bad. But it won't help, because your problem is your weight. Xu Yongzhao thought to himself, deliberately acting like he didn't care. Next to the bunker, Kong Kong-woo pressed his feet against the ground with the balls of his feet while his arms swung back and forth. He straightened his knees with all his strength, pushing himself off the ground, his body drawing a straight line in the air. As he landed, he bent over his knees, drew in his stomach, and straightened his calves. After performing the movements Dai Li had taught him, he swung his arms backwards to balance himself out and landed on the ground with his heels. He finished the movement for the standing long jump with agility and confidence. Xu Yongzhao frowned a bit. He could tell that, although Kong Kong-woo's movement was far from the professional level, he had gotten points as well. Honestly, Kong Kong-woo mastered the techniques better than Daniel Yu. That move was good. Don't tell me that Dai Li is really better than me. He looked in the direction of the bunker and couldn't control his facial expressions any longer. That is not possible.
No way.
How could he jump further even though he is much heavier? How is that possible? Am I seeing things? He rubbed his eyes subconsciously. Dai Li's voice echoed at the same time, 225 meters. According to the criteria for the exam, that means 16 points. 80 points out of 100. Coach Zhao, I've won again. Chapter 12. Famous Coach Li both had been trained for only 4 days, yet one had jumped 217 meters while the other had jumped 225 meters. It was obvious who was better. And given the fact that Kong Kong-woo was much fatter than Daniel Yu and had still jumped further, the training results Dai Li had produced were graded more highly than Xu Yongzhao's. Shoot. I can't believe the coach from the municipal sports team lost. He was steamrolled. But they said he was an expert when it comes to the standing long jump. How could he lose so easily? This young man is even better than a professional coach. I would have signed my kid up here if I had known this before. Most of the people here were just killing time, but there were many parents among them as well. They couldn't remain calm after seeing this, especially those who had come with Xu Yongzhao. There were two kinds of people whose money was easier to be earned, women and parents. They didn't care about the price if it meant having a famous teacher hold training classes for their children, especially for important exams like the high school entrance exam, which was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They didn't care about cost. They cared about the result. If the children could get a higher score after the training, they didn't care about spending thousands of yuan. Before this incident, Xu Yongzhao was known as the famous coach among the parents. His title of coach of the municipal sports team earned him a lot of respect, much more than those normal coaches from some everyday middle schools. However, Xu Yongzhao had lost to Dai Li completely in today's competition, making Dai Li the famous coach now. Xu Yongzhao had lost his soul and had no idea what to do. A parent came from behind him and walked up quickly to Dai Li. The parent asked him directly, "Coach Li, are there any vacancies in your class?" "Yes, for sure." Dai Li nodded without any hesitation. "I'll leave you a number. Just call and speak to Professor Chen, or you can also add him through WeChat. You need to hurry if you want to sign up, though. There are less than 2 weeks left before the exam. Your child needs to begin training as soon as possible if you expect a higher score." "No problem, I'll go sign up right now and bring my son tomorrow." The parent promised immediately. "And me, Coach Li. I'll sign up too." "And me." Dai Li was surrounded by parents in the blink of an eye. Not far from him, Xu Yongzhao looked very lost. This was the cruel reality of the situation, and he had experienced it in front of everyone. All the parents that now surrounded Dai Li had been brought by him. But now it was obvious that they were going to change classes. Soon after, they would quit the SA student education program and turn to talent education, which meant a big loss of money for Xu Yongzhao. And this was only the first batch of people. Today's competition had already served as a testimony that Xu Yongzhao was not as good as Dai Li. And if that information spread, parents who cared about nothing except for their children's grades would all come to Dai Li. Xu Yongzhao, on the other hand, would lose more students. Xu Yongzhao had never felt regret like this. He had come here looking for trouble, simply wanting to show his abilities to attract more students. Dai Li had been nothing but a stepping stone to him. But now, Xu Yongzhao realized that this stepping stone was actually a sharp steel trap. He had fallen for it, too, stepping in and losing any leg he had to stand on. Where did this guy come from? If I'd known this before, I would never have come and gotten myself into this mess. Xu Yongzhao thought to himself. After dinner, Jianna Chen made himself a pot of tea and sat in front of the TV. His phone rang just as he was ready to watch a TV series. He took out his mobile phone, which was only for business, and saw an unfamiliar number. "Hello, this is Chen from Talent Education," Jianna Chen said, answering the phone. "Oh, you're Professor Chen. I want to sign my child up for your training class," the person on the other end of the phone said. It was not the first time he had gotten phone calls after his working hours. He said with experience and ease, "We mainly target education for middle school students. As for the cultural classes, we have writing, math, and English classes. We also have a centralized tutoring class only for middle school students who are in their 3rd year. As for extracurricular classes, we have singing and dancing classes." "Which grade is your child in this year?" "The 3rd grade. He stopped for a second and continued, "There are less than 2 weeks left for the high school PE entrance exam. I want to sign my son up in a PE training class." "Training class for the high school entrance PE exam?" Jianna Chen hesitated. He must have seen the enrollment advertisement from a few days ago saying we had a professional coach from the municipal sports team. This parent must have no idea that Xu Yongzhao is no longer with Talent Education. That's why he still wants to sign his child up for the class. Jianna Chen couldn't help but think of Dai Li. An undergraduate student, what could he do? "I would be so happy if could lead the students in the right direction. What else can I expect from him? I'd better stop enrolling any new students for this PE training class. If the students in this class couldn't get a good score on the exam, that could do a lot of damage to our reputation. I'd better tell him the truth." Jianna Chen thought about it and cleared his throat. Talent Education did open a training class for the high school PE entrance exam. But due to some unavoidable circumstances, Coach Zhao couldn't teach our class. "Coach Zhao? Who's that?" "I don't care about Coach Zhao, Coach Wang, or Coach Liu, I just want Coach Li," he said. Jianna Chen was confused. He couldn't figure out who Coach Li was. His silence made the parent on the other end of the phone panic. He thought Jianna Chen didn't want to enroll any other students. His tone turned serious and strict. "Your young Coach Li promised me that there would be a vacancy for us to sign up." "Young Coach Li? Oh, you mean our intern Li?" Jianna Chen finally realized that Coach Li meant Dai Li. Normally Jianna Chen called him Little Lee or Inner Lee. He was not used to someone calling him Coach Lee. The parent on the other side continued, "I want to sign my child up just for Coach Lee. He already promised me. You can't take it back. Just because of Dai Lee? He is just some undergraduate college student." This parent is making him sound like some famous coach. Jianna Chen didn't have the slightest idea what was going on. But if the parent insisted, there was no reason for Jianna Chen to refuse a customer. He said yes immediately. After he hung up the phone, another strange number appeared on his phone. "Hello, this is Chen from Talent Education," Jianna Chen said automatically. "Is this Talent Education? You have a very talented coach named Lee, right? I want to sign my son up for the high school PE entrance training class." Coach Lee again. Jianna Chen was completely confused now. Chapter 13. Third-grade coach Jianna Chen walked a student's mother out of the office. This was the fifth parent who had come here today to sign up for the PE exam training class. Where did Dai Li come from out of the blue? Why are all the parents coming here for him? Jianna Chen thought to himself, scratching his head. He had been running training education for a long time and it was the first time he had experienced something like this. How could an undergraduate student could attract so many students? Jianna Chen doubted that Dai Li asked his relatives to make up the numbers. The 5 students who had enrolled that night were just the beginning, however. The next day there were 3 more new students and 7 or 8 phone calls from interested parents. Then came the weekend. Parents now had more free time, and the enrollment numbers skyrocketed. There were 60 new students in 2 days. 20 new students in 4 days. They couldn't all be Dai Li's relatives. Normal people didn't even have that many family members. Jianna Chen couldn't figure it out, so he asked everyone he knew to collect information. Finally, he found out what had happened. 4 days ago, Dai Li won in a competition with Xu Yunshao. Jianna Chen was so surprised at the information. One was the professional coach from the municipal sports team, which almost represented the highest training level of Yuzhou City. The other was just some undergraduate college student. There was no way to compare the two people. How could a student compete with a professional coach who had more than 10 years of experience? However, Dai Li had the best results. Professional coach Xu Yunshao only had one word prefacing his name now, loser. Jianna Chen would never have believed it if he hadn't gotten the same information from everyone else. He doubted that Xu Yunshao was Dai Li's swindler who had lost on purpose in front of the others just to help him. However, the damage to Xu Yunshao's reputation was too great. There was no chance he would have done it for Dai Li. A professional couldn't even compete with a young college student. This made people think that Xu Yunshao didn't deserve his title since he had no actual skills. And because of that, the students had left one by one, like a domino effect. If it was like the other kinds of normal training classes, like Chinese, math, or English, they wouldn't have turned to another teacher immediately just because the teacher was not as good as others. But training classes for high school entrance exams were different. Middle school had primary education that didn't allow students to repeat the courses. Even if some places did, the key high schools didn't accept repeat students. For students who were going to take the exam, the PE exam was their only opportunity in their entire life. Of course, parents would choose the best of the best class with the best teacher. For students whose targets were key high schools, even 1 point meant weeding out a lot of competitors. Dai Li now had 36 students in total. Jianna Chen didn't continue enrolling new students because he thought it would be hard enough for Dai Li to train 36 students by himself at the same time. It was also because there was no more room on the training field. In addition, there was only 1 week left until the PE exam, so it would be too late to start now for any students just joining the program. On the training field, Dai Li frowned with a look full of worry. The progress is coming slower than before. Dai Li thought to himself. The high school PE entrance exam was around the corner, but the students were improving slower than they had been. You could easily tell from the numbers in the detecting system. The same students who had been gaining a lot of points each day in the beginning could now only gain 1 point after a whole day's training. This worried Dai Li very much. Has the training effect decreased? No way. There are still a few days left before the top-level coach card expires. There should be no difference between the training effects from before to today. Why are they improving so slowly now? The voice of the system spoke while Dali was mulling over it. It's normal that progress comes slower. Think about normal sports training. The progress is very obvious in the beginning, but then it slows down, and even stops. When you reach the top level, even very slight progress will take you forever to develop. This has nothing to do with the system, it's just the physical limitations of humans. Let's take the 100m sprint as an example. It only takes a few weeks to improve from 13 seconds to 12 seconds. But it will take you a few months to improve from 12 seconds to 11 seconds. And from 11 seconds to 10 seconds, it might take you a few years. 99% of athletes have spent their entire life trying to break the wall of 10 seconds, but couldn't. After breaking the 10-second barrier, an improvement of even 0.01 seconds is pushing it. The better you are, the slower you progress. Some of the top athletes might even get worse if they don't continue a certain number of exercises. This is the rule of all sports. Dali nodded. Now I get it. My students have already reached their limitations, so the progress will come slower than before. But although the results are not as good as before, they will still be able to get full scores on the PE exam according to their abilities now. You can say that again. The system stopped for a second and continued, I have good news for you. Your experience has met the requirement to level up 1 minute ago. You are no longer a newbie. You're a real coach. I leveled. I didn't expect it to be this fast. This had come much faster than Lee thought it would have, which made him draw a blank for a second. But then he realized that it was because the number of the students had increased, meaning that the speed of upgrading had gotten faster. It had taken Dali a long time to reach 100 points of experience when he had only had 12 students to train. But now that he had 36 students, the speed had tripled as well. That was why he was able to get to the next level ahead of the schedule. Name, Dali Coach Level, Third-Rate Coach, Preliminary Phase, 0 and thousandths, Others, Top-Level Coach Trial Card, 4 days, Training List, Zheming Huang, Kosen Li, Kong Kong Wu, Zhenya Zhu. Third-Rate Coach at Preliminary Phase. How many phases are there? Dali asked. The system answered immediately, 3. Preliminary, Intermediate, and Senior Phases. After you reach the senior phase of the third-rate coach, you can get ready to move up to become the second-rate coach. So is this 0 and thousandths experience for the intermediate phase or the senior phase? Dali continued asking. For the intermediate phase, of course, the system answered without any hesitation. But this means that I need even more experience to upgrade to the second-rate coach. Dali complained. Stop complaining and check your rewards. You get a reward every time you level. You just got one since you upgraded from a newbie to a third-rate coach. Don't you want to check what's in the gift package? The system asked. Dali thought about the gift for a moment, and suddenly the gift package showed up in the system. Last time I got a 14-day top-level trial card. I wonder what I will get this time. Dali opened the gift, wondering what was inside. Chapter 14. Full score. Dali opened the gift package and saw something golden twinkling. He took it out carefully and saw that it was a halo. Congratulations. You got a piece of equipment, the system said. What is that? A golden aperture? Should I put it on my head and pretend I'm an angel? Dali asked, joking around. You should, actually. The point of this halo is to put it on your head. But you should call it a halo instead of an aperture. There is a tag on it, the system said. Dali noticed the small tag stuck to the halo. It said Explosive Force Halo. Explosive Force Halo. Does it increase explosive force? Dali asked. Yes. You can increase explosive power by 10% when wearing it. Everyone on your list will benefit from the effect of Explosive Force Halo, too, the system said. Equipment like this halo can't help the trains develop much, but given the fact that everybody can benefit from it, we can say that it belongs in the rank among those gifts for upgrade. 10% more explosive power does have some benefits, though, thinking about the state everyone is in now. Among the 3 activities in the high school entrance PE exam, the 1000m race mainly focuses on testing students' endurance. Pull-ups are more about the strength of the upper body since a full score requires more than 10 repetitions, and as for the standing long jump, it requires explosive power. With the help of this explosive force halo, students will save more time and energy training for it, Diley thought to himself. Since the explosive force halo could improve the students' performances in the standing long jump, Diley reduced the training time allotted to it and increased the practice of the other 2 activities. As the saying goes, time waits for no man. The high school PE entrance exam had come quickly, seemingly sneaking up on everyone. Yuzo City, where Diley lived, was a place with a large population, even compared to other cities nationally. Including all the middle schools from counties and towns, Yuzo City had more than 100,000 examins who would take the high school entrance exam this year. This number was almost the same as all the other first-tier cities. However, Yuzo City had much less educational resources compared to the other first-tier cities. With more than 100,000 examins, the enrollment quota was only 5,000 for high schools and 3,000 for technical secondary schools. This meant that there would be 2,000 middle school graduate students who were not going to be enrolled. This made for a much more great competition where there were many wolves but not enough meat. The competition of the high school entrance exam in Yuzo City was very intense, and attracted much attention to it. Not only did the municipal education system put a premium on it, but the provincial education department did as well. Let's take the PE exam for example. To prevent students from cheating, all the exam proctors were from other cities, not local schools. It was more strict than college entrance exams. The 9th middle school had the highest passing rate compared to others. All the examins had a higher possibility of entering the key high schools. The results of the examins in the 9th middle school were regarded as the standard for the other schools. Right next to the horizontal bar outside the 9th middle school, there were 2 proctors talking and laughing in the shade. Professor Zhang, I heard that this 9th middle school is the best in Yuzo City and has the largest number of examins at more than 1.000. One of them said. Professor Zhang nodded. Tell me about it, Professor Wang. 1,000 students in one day. That's too many for us. I heard that it could be finished before lunch or at least before 3 o'clock in the afternoon in schools with less students. But here we have to stay until it gets dark. We should have a lot to eat for lunch, because I have no idea when we are going to have dinner. There is no one to blame besides our bad luck that we were sent to the examination room with the most students. And the activity is pull-ups, the most time-consuming subject, Professor Wang complained. Professor Zhang nodded in agreement and said, the examination time was limited to 1 minute a few years ago. Do as many as you can in 1 minute and that was it. But it was too difficult for most students, and 2/3 failed. The exam is going to take longer now that they've gotten rid of the time limit. Many people thought that the 1000m race was the most time-consuming subject, but in actuality, it was pull-ups. It took middle school students 4 or 5 minutes normally. Because the examins could do the 1000m race together, they could ask 12 students to run together if 10 students per group was too slow. They could even ask 14 or 15 students to run in the same group. Both the standing long jump and pull-ups required students to take the exam one by one. Standing long jump only took a few seconds, however, while pull-ups took much longer. Even if some of the examins couldn't do any more pull-ups, they would still hang on the horizontal bar, which wasted even more time. Professor Zhang continued complaining. The quality of life is getting better and better, but the physical abilities of the children is getting worse. We used to run 5,000 meters to go to school back in our day. Look at the students now, the 1000m race could kill them. And the passing grade for pull-ups is only 6. Yet there are still many students who can't even make it. Look at this fatty. I bet he can't do more than 3 or 4. Professor Zhang pointed at the next examen. It was Hemming Huang. He passed his examination admission card to the proctor and walked up to the horizontal bar. Another fatty. I bet he can't do much. The other examiner who was as fat as him only did 2, right? That's good for us since we can save more time. The more students like them there are, the earlier we can finish and go to dinner, Professor White thought, laughing to himself. Zheng and Huang jumped onto the horizontal bar as they were speaking to each other. The proctor began counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Professor Zheng counted with low voice. He passed. Did I count wrong? How could an examiner as fat as him pass the exam? Professor Wang was very surprised. 7, 8, 9, 10. Is there something wrong with my eyes? Most of the examiners slimmer than him couldn't do more than 10. Zheng Huang slowed down his tempo after doing 10 pull-ups. But he didn't stop. 11, 12. Is he going to get a full score? Every proctor's attention was now on him. They didn't expect a fat examiner like him to do more than 12 pull-ups consecutively. Zheng Huang's technique started to break down for the 13th pull-up. He didn't take a breath, instead clenching his teeth and doing the 14th one. However, this time it was obvious that he had done it in a rush. The movement was far from skillful, and he had even used his legs to help him up. Still, Zheng Huang had done 14 pull-ups. 14. Oh my gosh. He really got a full score. Professor Wang couldn't help but shout. Chapter 15. Fatties make a move. The grading for the high school PE entrance exam differed depending on region. Dai had figured that his students could get 2 points for each repetition in for their first 6 pull-ups. That would mean 12 points in total, which was the passing grade. From the 7th pull-up on, it was only 1 point per repetition. This meant that if an examiner wanted a full score of 20 points, then he or she had to do 14 pull-ups consecutively. This grading system made it very difficult for examiners to get a full score in the activity of pull-ups. Speaking of its difficulty, doing 14 pull-ups consecutively was a lot more difficult than doing 6 pull-ups. Examiners needed to improve drastically to make the jump from 6 repetitions to 14. However, no matter how much you improved, the reward was only an additional 8 points. Even great students wouldn't chase the limit of 14 repetitions. They were satisfied with 16 or 17 points, which only required 10 or more pull-ups. Most students just wanted to pass the exam. Professor Zheng and Professor Wang had been here for more than a few hours as proctors and had only seen very few students complete all 14 pull-ups. 10 pull-ups were already impressive, though, since many of the students couldn't even pass the exam. Examiners who were as fat as Zheng Huang were obviously expected to fail the exam in the eyes of the proctors. 4 pull-ups would have been considered good for someone like him. However, he had done 10 more than that. Of course, it shocked the 2 proctors that he had gotten a full score. It was true that Shuyang Zhao, a professional coach, was better than the other middle school PE teachers. He definitely deserved the title of professional coach considering the fact that he had dared to promise to help Zheng Huang do 6 pull-ups while the other 2 proctors had assumed Zheng could only do 4. Blame it on bad luck that he had met someone like Dai Li, who would assist him to help him. If he had competed with other normal middle school teachers, he could definitely have won the game. During the examination held in the affiliated middle school of a normal university, the standing long jump test was underway. Big Mac Kong Wu was already in front of the bunker. Children nowadays are eating too much. Look at him. How could he grow as big as that? How much meat did he eat to build his body? His parents should definitely be held responsible for his obesity. It's bad for his health. While the proctors were still criticizing his parents to themselves, Kong Wu had already swung his arms to get ready for his jump. I'm afraid it will be too difficult for him to get a passing grade since he would have to jump more than 1.85 meters. Considering how fat he is, I can only wish him good luck. I'm guessing he will jump 1.80 or 1.70 meters. Could it be 1.60 meters? That's the minimum standard. If he scores any lower than that, he will get a 0. The proctor looked at Kong Wu with worry. He was full of sympathy for him, worrying that Kong Wu couldn't even reach the minimum standard of 1.60 meters, getting 0 points. Kong Wu dug into the ground with the balls of his feet and pushed off, jumping into the air. Well, his movement was pretty standard, the proctor thought. Kong Wu's flexibility surprised the proctor, considering his size. Kong Kong bent his knees, drew in his stomach, and stretched out his calves to balance and land in the bunker. There was a visible measuring line adjacent to the bunker with a scale from the lowest score, 1.60 meters, to the highest score, which was 250 meters. The measuring line stopped at 250 meters because that was the highest. Kong Kong's heels were past the line of 250 meters. He jumped over 250 meters, he got a full score. The proctor's face was full of shock and his eyes were wide open. He'd never expected that a Big Mac who weighed more than 90 kilograms could jump over 250 meters. In the scoring criteria of Yuzo City's high school PE entrance exam, the full score for the boys standing long jump was exactly 250 meters. In fact, it was very difficult for a middle school student who was in his third year to jump over 250 meters. The average score of students his age was 220 meters. It was unbelievably difficult to improve after 235 meters. Most students could never jump over 240 meters without professional training. 235 meters was worth 17 points, 240 meters was worth 18 points, and 245 meters was worth 19 points. Most students could get 16 points to 18 points in the standing long jump. Those who could get 20 points were students with excellent physical gifts and sports abilities. It was an impossible task for people like Kong Kongwu to get a full score, yet he had done it. After 10 minutes, Kong Kongwu showed up to the examination field of the 1000 m race. At the destination, a few proctors were sitting in the shade. A middle-aged man in his 40s with a thermos was pouring tea for them. "Professor Huang, have some tea." And "Professor Sun, look, your tea leaves are out of color. Let me pour you another one." "Professor Kai, let me fill your cup." The middle-aged man who was pouring tea was PE teacher Chanfulia from the affiliated middle school of the normal university. Since all the proctors had to be sent from other cities, the teachers from the city weren't able to oversee the exam. However, they were not doing nothing. They were responsible for logistics, like taking care of the proctors' meals, drinks, rest, and so on. It needed to be done by the teachers from each school. That was why Chanfuliao had showed up to the examination field with an attentive hospitality, pouring tea for the other proctors. He had his own motivation for being so hospitable, too. He hoped these proctors would give a free pass to the students. The higher the students' scores were, the better it would his teaching ability look. He could also get a promotion out of it and a more impressive title. Calculating the time of the 1000 m race depended on the stopwatch in the proctor's hands. When you calculated manually, there were always slight differences. If the proctor stopped the stopwatch 1 or 2 seconds earlier, the results of the students would be better. These kind of differences were permitted. For example, if the proctor showed some sympathy and pressed the button 1 second earlier, a student's time could change from 3 min, 42 secs to 3 min, 40 secs, 50. Because proctors always left out the number after seconds, the final result would be 3 min, 40 secs, meaning the student would get 1 more point. There was no chance of anything like this happening when it came to pull-ups in the standing long jump. So, Chanfuliao had decided to stay in the area where the 1000 m race was taking place and acted as a waiter. He made sure to pour tea and fill their cups, and even brought some snacks and fruits during their break time, just in hopes that the proctors would show some sympathy to the students. Of course, it was clear to everyone what Chanfuliao's behavior meant. The leader of the proctor said politely, "Professor Liao, stop serving us until the rest. You haven't had a drink of water the entire afternoon." "I'm not tired at all, head Hu. My job today is to provide the best service to all of the teachers." Chanfuliao smiled and said, "Professor Liao is really hard-working. I can tell from the results of exams that he must have some teaching skills." Head Hu continued, "Look at this group. 3 students got full scores out of 12 people. That's a big deal." 3 full scores? A smile emerged from Chanfuliao's face. To get a full score in the 1000 m race, you had to reach the finish line before 3 min, 40 secs, which was much greater than the abilities of most of the students. Even for adults, the passing grade was 4 min. Given the fact that middle school students were not fully grown, finishing the 1000 m race in 3 min, 40 secs was a very big accomplishment. Normally there was only 1 student who could get a full score on a team. However, there were 3 on this team. It was incredible for sure. Chanfalia couldn't help but look for the students' results on the laptop. Ed, who didn't even try to cover it, letting him see the results. There was no need to hide the scores of the students from their own teacher. The three students who got full scores are Mansong, Dewey Chen, and Kong Kongwu. Kong Kongwu? Could it be the student from the third class who was the fattest in the whole school? No way he was able to get a full score. There must be something wrong. Chapter 16. 100% full score rate. Kong Kongwu was the fattest in the affiliated middle school of the normal university. That was why he had left Professor Chanfaliao with a lasting impression. He had no capacity for improvement in Chanfaliao's eyes. He would have suggested that the boy give up on the PE exam and put all his effort towards other exams. He was too fat to get any good scores on the PE exam. However, after Chanfaliao saw Kong Kongwu's score was 20 on the proctor's computer, he had no idea what had happened. To even pass the test would be a dream for Kong Kongwu, let alone get a full score. Could it be that the proctor miswrote the score? Should I remind them? He cleared his mind of this thought the next second. Why would he stop his own student from getting a high score? That didn't make sense. Ed, whose voice echoed again. Look, this Kong Kongwu got full scores in the other two activities, too. He got a full score across the board. There aren't many students that can get 60 points because the scoring criteria is so high this year. Professor Liao, is this Kong Kongwu one of the best students in sports here? The best student in sports? Kong Kongwu? Quit it. I would say he is the best student in Japanese sumo. Chanfaliao thought to himself. He could never link Ed, whose comment with his student Kong Kongwu, never. He smiled awkwardly, not knowing if he should nod or shake his head. The next second, he suddenly realized that Ed, who had said full score across the board. Kong Kongwu? Full score across the board. How is that possible? The proctors must all be blind if Kong Kongwu can get a full score. Chanfaliao looked at the screen again and again, just to make sure he hadn't misread it. Kong Kongwu's score was really 60 points. Oh my gosh, how is that? How could Kong Kongwu get a full score? And across the board. How had he survived the pull-ups? Chanfaliao's mind was running on fumes. The same thing was happening in the other examination fields as well. Some Big Mac student had done 14 pull-ups without a break, jumped over 250 meters, and finished the 1000 m race in 3 minutes, 46. One after another full scores were showing up. It surprised many of the proctors, but it didn't create any sensational news because it was normal that 3 or 4 fact examins got full scores out of hundreds or thousands of students in some examination fields. It could only be regarded as a coincidence. The high school PE entrance exam came to an end, yet Jiana Chen was busy again. There was only 1 month to go before the cultural class exam, and it was the key period for training classes to enroll because all the examins of the high school entrance exam had entered the home stretch. And after the high school entrance exam came the summer holiday. The 2-month summer holiday was a golden period for training classes to make money. Jiana Chen didn't forget to call the parents to hear their reviews, however. The competition between training classes was very intense, which made public praise very important. Compared to other forms of advertising, reviews from parents were the best. People tended to believe their relatives, friends, neighbors, and colleagues if they said something was good. That was why Talent Education called the parents for reviews every time the training class was over. Professor Chen, I finished the phone calls for the training class of the high school PE entrance exam. A young teacher brought the report of the reviews to Jiana Chen. How was it? Jiana Chen asked without even raising his head. The satisfaction rate is 100%, the female teacher said. Jiana Chen nodded silently. The 100% outcome didn't surprise him at all because it was pretty normal in training classes. Many parents signed their children up not for the sake of raising their children's scores, but to prevent them from playing games. They wanted to fill their children's schedule. Some of the parents just signed their children up because they saw the advertisements and felt like they should follow that trend, following the herd mentality. Some even signed their children up just because they didn't want to lose, since all the other children went to training classes. But there was one thing for sure, no parent would place hope in training classes after school. What mattered was their children's studies at school. If the training classes were good enough to improve their children's studies, what was the point of having school? Since they didn't place much hope in the class in the first place, they didn't feel dissatisfied either. The training class was like an extra nutritious snack after meal. As long as the student could get something out of it, it was enough, even if it was small. And as long as the teacher gave some type of effort to teach the children, the students would improve to some extent. Unless there were some earnest parents, a 100% satisfaction rate was not big news. I remember that we had 36 students in the PE training class, right? Did you ask for their grades? How many of them passed? Gianna-chan asked. I did. All 36 students passed the exam. The passing rate is 100%. The female teacher continued, we are really lucky. Every one of them had 60 points exactly. If one of them had gotten even 1 point less, they wouldn't have been able to pass the exam. The female teacher taught Singhin, so she had no idea that the full score for PE was 60 points. She thought that it was a 100-mark system and that 60 points was the passing line. What did you say? Each one of them got 60 points? Gianna-chan raised his head surprisingly. I felt strange too. All of them got 60 points, exactly the passing line. Why was there no one who performed above average and got a few more points? The female teacher asked. As that's because the full score for PE is 60. It's not the passing line, it's the full score. The 100% is not the passing grade, it's a perfect score. Gianna-chan couldn't sit in his chair calmly. He grabbed the report of the reviews and read it again and again. Although Gianna-chan was not involved in the training process, he was there during the enrollment. He knew what each student looked like. Each one was fatter than the next. Gianna-chan would have been grateful if they could have just passed the exam. He had never expected them to get full scores. 36 students. Even one perfect score would have surprised Gianna-chan, let alone all of them. Gianna-chan felt like he was witnessing one of God's miracles. Dali. It's because of him. I'd have never thought that this young man could have given me such a big surprise. It's a miracle. Gianna-chan repeated Dali's name, feeling like he should worship him. Chapter 17. Making a big fortune after 2 weeks, Dali returned to Gianna-chan's office. Lee, all the credit belongs to you this time. Without you, talent education wouldn't be able to continue the training class for the high school PE entrance exam. Gianna-chan smiled, opening the safe behind him. He took out a bulging envelope and gave it to Dali. You've had a long fight these last few days. Thank you, Professor Chen. Dali knew that his salary was inside of the envelope. He took it out immediately and began calculating. 1 student means 500 yuan. 36 students means 18.000. I can't believe I made 18.000 yuan in 2 weeks. This is awesome. However, the envelope felt strange in his hand. Why is it so thick? It should be no more than 2 stacks of money. Is 18.000 yuan this thick? I feel like there are 3 or 4 stacks of money. Could it be that they are all in 50 yuan bills instead of 100s? Dali felt embarrassed opening the envelope and counting the money. It was Gianna-chan who said, open and count it. It should be 36.000 yuan. 36.000. Double? Did you count wrong? Dali had no idea what happened. No, I didn't, Gianna-chan said with certainty. He smiled and continued, I told you 500 yuan for 1 student. But this time, because all of the students in our training class got full scores, I gave you 1.000 yuan per student, which made it 36.000. Dali was still at a loss for words. Gianna-chan continued explaining. According to my information, the highest commission that a coach can get from a training class of the high school PE entrance exam in Yuzo City is 1.000 yuan per student. Normal PE teachers from middle schools can't reach that price, but I'm paying you to the highest standard. The salary for interns we talked about is gone because those professional professors only take commissions. It was 18,000 yuan more than what he had expected. Dali did not care about that intern's salary, which was 300 yuan per week. However, Dali was still surprised that Jian Chen would raise the salary by himself, since most capitalists tried every trick they could to deduct wages. This confused Dali. Jian Chen continued, "Li, our training class for the PE exam ended this year. However, we are going to have it next year too. And we plan to do 2 to 3 grades, as well as increase the enrollment in each class. I hope we can continue working together. As for the commission, I promise to give you the highest in this industry." Dali finally got the idea of why Jian Chen raised the commission. He obviously wanted to keep Dali working at the PE training class next year for talent education. There was no doubt that Jian Chen was a successful businessman. Normally people who only placed hope in making a fortune would try every method to take advantage of Dali's salary, let alone raise it. But what Jian Chen cared about was the future. He hoped to build a long-term relationship with Dali to prepare for next year. Although Dali was not famous at all, and he was not a professional coach, the result he had achieved was amazing. 36 students had passed the exam with perfect scores with only 2 weeks of training. It spoke to Dali's ability. And for sure, the records would attract a lot of parents. Jian Chen believed that he wouldn't have to worry about the students who would sign up as long as Dali worked for him. Dali continued counting to himself. 2 to 3 grades of training class with more students in each class. Let's say 40 students per grade across 3 grades, that would make 120 students. The commission would be 120.000 yuan if 1.000 yuan is offered as a commission per person. Dali was shocked by the number after he made the calculation. If he could make 120.000 yuan every year there was a high school entrance PE exam, he could make 10.000 yuan per month without working the entire year if he split the number evenly across all 12 months. Dali didn't have to worry about if there would be enough students or not. Yuzhou City was a city with a large population, and there were more than hundreds of thousands of examens. 100 or 200 students for the training class would be a piece of cake. He nodded thinking about the cash. "Professor Chen, I will definitely be here if you still have training classes next year." Although it was just a verbal promise, Jian Chen had already achieved his initial purpose. But he didn't expect to keep Dali, who was a genius, simply through a verbal promise. He had some other tactics. He changed his tone and said calmly, as if they were just chatting, "The result of the public constitution was already published." "How was it?" "I screwed it up." Dali didn't try to cover. "I'll work harder next year." "Do you have any plans then?" "For job hunting?" Jian Chen asked. "I plan to go to the job market for college students to see if I can get a job." Dali continued, "To be honest, it's hard for me to find a job because of my major. I have some information that you might be interested in. Our municipal sports school is going to hire some assistant coaches. It's temporary, though, not a permanent position," Jian Chen said. The so-called temporary hiring in the public institution was actually contract work. You could even call it a part-time job if you boiled it down. Although the people who were hired temporarily were not the same as permanent workers, they still had to do the same work, sometimes even more. But the salary and benefits were completely different. Sometimes temporary workers even had to bear the blame for something even if it was not their fault. For example, if news came out on the internet that the members of the City Urban Administrative and Law Enforcement Bureau used violence during work, it was always the temporary workers who had done it after the investigation. The permanent workers would always be seen as nice and friendly, never using violence. Temporary workers were one rank below the others in the public institutions. However, there were still many people who made every effort just to get a temporary position there. Although the salary was not high, and the work was very hard, it was at least stable. The salary was paid on time and they wouldn't suddenly be unemployed. Especially for those parents who were old, the positions in public constitutions were real jobs. A temporary worker who earned 3.000 yuan was considered much better than online writers who earned 30.000 yuan a month. And to graduates like Dali, who had little social experience, the choices were limited. A temporary position in a public institution was very attractive to him, especially a public institution that was a sports school. All Dali wanted was a job related to training. The more trains he got, the more empirical value he would gain, and the quicker he could upgrade his coach level. Sports school was obviously the best choice. They were full of trains that Dali could use his coaching system on to make it easy on himself. Thank you so much, Professor Chen. I will go there and check it out tomorrow, Dali said. Jianna Chen wanted to help him to the end since he had been with him since the beginning. He took out a piece of memo paper from the drawer and gave it to Dali. This is the number of Professor King Hui-san, who works in the sports school. He used to be my classmate. I'll talk you through it. Just go there tomorrow and tell him directly that you are there because of me. Chapter 18. New job. Dali went to the municipal sports school and found Professor King Hui-san. King Hui-san was a math teacher. Because sports training was seen as more important than cultural classes in sports school, the latter was like decorative furniture with no practical function. That was the same reason King Hui-san had no chance of being promoted and was still an ordinary teacher. In the HR office, Dali was filling out the application seriously. King Hui-san stood right next to him and began his incessant speech. Back a few years ago, our sports school would never hire contract teachers. But this year is different. Our new principal, Lu, met with corporate and all the other key high schools in our city and agreed to train the sports talent students for them. We provide the teachers, and the high schools will take care of the training fields and students. That's why we are out of hands and need to recruit some coach assistants from the society. So this recruitment is for the quick training of sports talent students. Dali nodded. He was very familiar with sports talent students because he had just been one of them. There were 3 ways for sports talent students to enter colleges. The first was to become a high-level athlete. The admission rate for high-level athletes was very low. The benefit, though, was that they got a chance to enter a college without taking any tests, which provided them with more choices of colleges. To become a high-level athlete, one had to be a national first-class athlete in an individual sport or a key player on a sports team who had ranked in the top 8 of national games. These 2 requirements might not be difficult at all for excellent students from sports schools, but it was an unreachable goal for high school students. The second way to enter college was the special exam for sports. It was a special enrollment system that could lower the admission score. For example, if the admission score for a college was 500 points normally, then the special exam for sports only required 100 points to enter the same college. Compared to the high-level athletes, the threshold for the special exam for sports was much lower. However, one still needs to have the certificate of national second-class athlete to be qualified to take the special exam for sports in each college. The third way was to become a sports talent student. It was mostly the same as normal enrollment, but the admission score was a little bit lower. However, it was not as low as the special exams for sports. It was very easy to become a sports talent student. You didn't need to be a national athlete. All one needed to do was to take the independent enrollment exam held by each college. After New Year's Day, the examiners who went from one college to another were all sports talent students. This was regarded as a shortcut for many examens. Dali had entered college this way. There were also some majors that were related to sports, like physical education, for example. Even though the examiners had no professional sports skills at any level, they could still take the exam. However, the admission score wouldn't change from the normal passing line. It took a long time to train and become a high-level athlete or pass the special exam for sports. One had to be the best of the best across the whole city to get the label of first-class athlete and become a high-level athlete as a high school student. This was because a national first-class athlete had to get a record that reached a certain standard in provincial or national games to get the title. Sports talent students could be trained in a short period of time. The threshold of the exam for sports talent students was very low. One could start during the last year of high school and be well on track. If for 6 months one worked hard for half of every afternoon, they would have no problem passing a few exams in several colleges. The school could raise their admission rate for colleges if they could turn students with normal grades into sports talent students. However, since the quota of sports teachers in high school was very low, and the training results were not as good as the sports school, this corporation was brought to the table. The sports school provided schools with coaches in order to help each high school train sports talent students. The number of coaches in the sports school was not enough to meet the demand since there were dozens of high schools in Uzo City. The sports school also had to make sure that the training inside their own school could be run normally. Because the quota of permanent coaches had been reached, the school had to hire some coach assistants to meet the demand. After 1 week, Dyley took the written exam. The recruitment of contract coaches assistants in the sports school was very attractive. There were more than 100 applicants. The levels of the applicants were all very different. Most of them had graduated from a sports school or sports college and only had a diploma of technical secondary school or junior college. People like Dyley, who were from an undergraduate college, could rank extremely high here. There was no doubt that Dyley had advantages in the written exam since his major was sports training. He had more knowledge of sports than the others. If someone asked Dyley to race them on a playground, he might lose, but he was definitely better than most when it came to theories. The results of the written test were very satisfying. He ranked first on the list. As long as he could make it somewhere in the middle of the following fitness test, he should be able to stay. There were 4 subjects in the fitness test for the recruitment: the 100m sprint, the 800m race, the standing long jump, and the 5 kg shot put. These were the most basic subjects of the fitness test. Since the sports coaches were not athletes, they were only required to have normal physical ability. That was why fitness only took up 1/3 of the entire score. Dyley had 80 points in sports ability, which was higher than many average people. His major, sports training, had required that he finish 40% of the course in the training field, so his physical makeup had improved a lot. He was not a professional athlete, though. There were some retired athletes among the applicants whose sports ability were excellent, even though they hadn't achieved any records during their time. They were better than Dyley fitness-wise for sure. Luckily, the people who showed up on the top of the list in the fitness test had gotten very average grades on the written exam. Some of them were even on the bottom of the list. These ex-athletes, who knew nothing outside of sports only, had diplomas from technical secondary school. There was no way that they could compete with college students like Dyley, who had majored in sports training. Dyley only got a normal score on the fitness test, but he still ranked very high overall since he had done perfectly on the written exam. I'm employed. There is no need to worry about the job now. Dyley's face was full of hope. He felt he was one step closer to the coaching career he envisioned. Chapter 19. The summer training class in sports school. The sports school hired 30 coaching assistants, including Dyley. In the meeting room, the HR manager was holding an employment contract in his hand as he said, "After you sign this trial contract, you are in the 3-month trial period. I won't say anything else about discipline, I've said enough. During the trial period, your salary will be 800 yuan per month. The formal contract of employment will be signed after the trial period. Everybody should try their best. I can fire you whenever I want if I feel your performance isn't good enough during the trial period." Somebody immediately whispered, "It's already June. The summer holiday is around the corner. I bet we don't have a lot of work to do during the holiday, which would mean that we only have a 1-month trial period." You are right. The best thing about being a teacher is that we can rest for 3 months during the summer and winter holidays every year and get paid, another person said in agreement. The HR manager stood on the platform and said, "You might think that there won't be too much work to do since the next 2 months are the summer holiday, and that nobody will be fired. I must tell you that you are completely wrong. The following 2 months are what will really matter to you." His words got everybody's attention. All the new employees stopped their writing and looked at the manager. He stopped for a second, almost as if to act dramatic effect to arouse people's interest, and then continued, "There isn't much time left before the summer holiday. Our school will organize a few training classes in the next 2 months, and all the new coaching assistants have to be a part of it. We'll decide if you can stay or not directly based on your performance." According to the rules, public schools were not allowed to organize training classes. However, the sports school was different from other public schools since it was a place for cultivating athletes. A lot of students in the sports school came from selection exams. The school could use these exams to organize and open training classes during the holidays to make some extra cash. Many people became very nervous after hearing open training classes. The main job for the new coaching assistants was to train athletes. It made them nervous knowing that they were going to enter the front line of training when they still didn't have enough experience. On top of that, they would be evaluated to see if they could stay or not based off of it. Unlike the others, Diley was excited to begin. The last thing he was worried about was training, since he had the coaching system to help him. He was actually hoping that the training would start as soon as possible so he could get enough empirical value to upgrade to the next level. Lee, look over this material and print it out. Lee, this is the summary of last year's work. Follow this form and make a summary for this year. Lee, make an Excel sheet of this name list and give it to me. Lee, this is what I'm going to apply for. Fill out an application. We need to ask for something from the general department. Lee, this is the list of names with contacts on it that the admissions office just sent to us. Make it into an Excel sheet and email it to the training department. Diley was very busy, not because of his extraordinary ability, but because he was a college student. In the normal job market, college students were similar to stray dogs, and masters were everywhere. Even PhD students were not difficult to find. A person with an undergraduate degree did not rank high on the job market. However, here in this sports school, an undergraduate degree was the highest rank achievable. Many of the coaches here were retired athletes who focused mainly on training instead of studying. All they were able to do was sit in front of the computer and click their mouse to surf the internet, watch movies, and play games. Most of them didn't even know how to use Microsoft Office. If one of them had been asked to write a summary, they wouldn't be able to write more than 200 or 300 words. This was Diley's area of expertise. All work that involved a computer was given to him. The assistants with less of an education could only apply themselves to physical labor. After a few days of working, Diley had a general idea of the summer training class that was about to start. There were several sports projects in this class. The most popular ones were table tennis class and basketball class. Most of the students who had signed up for table tennis were primary school students. As for basketball, most of them were middle school students. There weren't many high school students since studying occupied most of their time. The only one class that had them was the 100M spring training class. It targeted high school students who were about to start their third year and whose goal was to take the track and field competition for national second-class athletes in September to receive their certificates. The certificate of national second-class athlete was very important for the graduating students who wanted to take the college entrance exam. As long as they could get the certificate, they would be qualified to take the special exam for sports held by key colleges. If they were lucky enough, they might even be able to be admitted to the college with a score of 100 points. And even if they didn't pass the special exam, they could still become sports talent students. With the ability a national second-class athlete possessed, it wouldn't be very difficult for them to be a sports talent student and enter the college. Besides, there was a policy in place where if a graduating student had the certificate of national second-class athlete, then he or she could enjoy the benefit of 20 additional points. Even 1 point on the exam could help you eliminate hundreds of thousands of competing applicants. 20 points was a big enough deal to attract most of the examines. This wasn't the only benefit, either. The training fee was pretty high, 15.000 yuan for 2 months, which meant 250 yuan per day. In first-tier cities, the price might have been less of a worry. However, in Yuzhou City, a fourth-tier city, the price was too high for most parents with normal incomes. It was not easy to become a national second-class athlete, even if the training period was 2 months complete with full days of training. The students had to have some basic sports ability to achieve the goal. It would take forever for those with muscle imbalances to achieve such a feat. The 100M race was chosen because it was the easiest one both for students and coaches. At least for the level of national second-class athlete, there weren't many difficult movements to master. Time flew by, and by July all the students were ready for the holiday. The sports training class was also ready to welcome the new students. Chapter 20. Fired. The HR manager knocked on the door and went inside the room. He found himself smiling as soon as he saw the person that was sitting at the head of the table. "Director Zhao, I heard that you came back from the business trip. How was it?" "Not bad. I finished all the errands," Director Zhao said, giving him a look that asked him to have a seat. The manager was pretty cautious in front of Zhao, trying to give him nothing but respect. Although his position was just as important as Director Zhao's, his words meant less than his. The training department was the most powerful one in the sports school. On top of that, the vice principal, who was also in charge of HR, had just retired. Some said that Director Zhao would get promoted to replace the retired vice president. The HR manager had to give his respect to the future vice president and affiliated leader of the HR office, if for no other reason than to leave the future leader with a good impression of him. The HR manager cleared his throat and changed his tone to report the work. "The summer training classes will begin soon. We already hired 30 coaching assistants to help us, but we need your help allocating them into different classes. I brought you their information." The HR manager took out the file from his briefcase and gave it to Director Zhao. "It's no big deal. Just do it according to the number of students in each class." Although Director Zhao had said it casually, his expression showed that he was very satisfied with how the HR manager was speaking. Director Zhao had already started to enjoy this feeling of being treated like a vice president, even if it had not happened yet. He took the file and flicked through a few pages of the new assistant's information. A name stood out to him. Dai. Director Zhao frowned a little bit as his eyes glanced at the sheet. Dai is a college student who just graduated this year. He majored in sports training and he even has a teaching qualification certificate. He ranked first on the written test, and his results for the fitness test were above average too. I think he is an outstanding young person, and I heard that he had some working experience coaching a class of 30 students for the high school PE entrance exam, the HR manager said, introducing him immediately. "That's him. How dare he come here? There are hundreds of ways leading to heaven, but unfortunately you chose the one to hell." Director Zhao thought to himself. He raised his head the next second and said, "No, we can't hire this dummy." "No." The HR manager was confused by what Director Zhao had said. Zhao began giving his explanation. "A sports training major student with excellent grades and a teaching qualification certificate. People like him will definitely take the exam to become a permanent employee instead of simply being a contract employee for our sports school. We won't be able to keep him anyway. It's better to let him go now to find a better position." "So, you mean?" the HR manager asked with uncertainty. "Since we wouldn't be able to keep him anyway, we are better off not wasting our time and energy recruiting him. Think about it, we try our best to help him develop into an excellent coach, then lose him. Isn't that kind of a waste? We can use those same resources to develop someone who will stay. The best action for the future of our school is to develop talents and keep them," Director Zhao said. Bullshit. The HR manager thought to himself. He could already tell that Dai must have offended the director, so he had come up with this excuse to keep Dai away. However, the director's excuse was not smooth enough that everybody would be fooled. Although the HR manager knew Director Zhao was just abusing his authority to take personal revenge, he had no reason to defend a temporary contract employee who was still in his trial period without any background, and go against the future vice principal. He nodded and said, "I got it. I'll fire him right away. I didn't pass the trial period. I'm fired." "Why? What did I do wrong?" Dai asked, confused. These past few days he had worked really hard. He hadn't done everything perfectly, but he was definitely not the worst among the new assistants. There were a bunch of people who were clearly worse than him. And considering his advantages and degree and major, Dai never thought that he would be the first one to be kicked out. The HR manager sighed slightly and looked at Dai pitifully. This was a decision made by our leader. I'm just following his instructions. I told you before that I would be able to fire any of you during the trial period. I'll give you a memo. Go to the finance section to get your salary for the days you've worked. Decision from the leader. Dai felt even more lost. He had only been here for a few days. He didn't even know who the leader was. How could he have offended the leader of the sports school? Dai was a stubborn person, he needed to get to the bottom of this. He didn't want to leave without even knowing why. He called Professor King Hyo-sun, hoping he could help him to figure out the reason he had been fired. King Hyo-sun was also surprised that the person he had recommended was fired for no reason. He asked around about it, and later Dai received a call from him the same afternoon. "Did you offend Director Zhao?" King Hyo-sun asked directly. "Director Zhao? Zhao who?" Dai asked. "Director Zhao of the training department. He was the one who decided you needed to be fired," King Hyo-sun said. Dai tried to remember, but still couldn't think of anything related to this Director Zhao. He said, "I really don't know this Director Zhao. I've only been here a few days. I haven't even been to the training department. How could I have offended him? Think more carefully. This our Zhao was not just some unrelated person in our school. I heard that he is going to be promoted during the second half of the year and become one of the leaders of the school." King Hyo-sun said. "I really have no idea what I did that offended him. Wait, what's his name again?" A thought suddenly popped into Dai's head. "Sao Zhao," King Hyo-sun repeated. "Does he have a relative called Shuyang Zhao? The one who works as a coach for the municipal sports team?" Dai asked immediately. "Well, now that you mention it, I think so. He does have a younger brother on the municipal sports team who teaches standing long jump. But I don't know his name exactly," King Hyo-sun said. "Then that's him. I guess I can never get rid of this Shuyang Zhao." Dai had finally realized what happened. The director had fired him to get revenge for his younger brother. End of Part 1. Novels Hall Dynasty.